Welcome to the Forthright Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Ian, with David, as always. And this week we're going to be talking about E3 2021 as it happened kind of last week. It's kind of like the last weekend and this week, I guess. It's weird because I think they had Summer Game Fest, which they're all saying is something different. But that started like on Saturday, and then Sunday was the E3 stuff for Xbox, and then E3 stuff like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. At the same time as the Summer Game Fest thing was going on. So it's like everybody just announced a bunch of stuff last week, except for Sony. Sony skipped the entire conference in hopes that they might have like some type of Sony Play event or something later on. We don't know. I think the speculation is that it's going to be towards the end of June. But basically, we're going to be focusing on talking about what happened last week, what games were announced, what our thoughts are on those things, and what there is to look forward to and what there is not to look forward to really come this year. So why don't you just jump right on in, Dave?
So I watched hours of footage, and all I extrapolated from all of it was a lot of sequels, a lot of expansions, and a lot of hype. And boy, E3 2021 was chock full of this stuff. Now, you had your usual suspects in Xbox, Nintendo, and Ubisoft, among others, right? But what was really odd about this E3 was how companies like Verizon entered the show, and Verizon didn't even show any games, mind you. They just discussed technology related to 5G mobile gaming, told us about Madden Mobile and how it had great speed, but they didn't show us anything about the demonstration of how much lag-free it would be, right?
And this is the thing also is that E3, as we know in the past, is nobody there cares about mobile gaming. You don't go to E3 and talk about mobile gaming because the people who play mobile gaming a lot are not people who go to E3 or people who pay attention to E3. They're casual gamers. So totally wrong venue to be talking about this stuff.
I'd say there's some hardcore gaming, but I feel like it's more reserved in like the VR space, things like that. But they never show that stuff either, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that Verizon was there. And then you had Intellivision, which was an interesting one, right? Intellivision, mostly known for like the ColecoVision and consoles of the retro gaming era, right? They presented the Amico console, which is similar to Nintendo's Wii U, but this, instead of one player having like a screen tablet, every player gets their own handheld controller with a built-in screen. And the titles they showed were basically average to mediocre looking mobile games or retro titles with updated graphics. And the strongest games that I saw from their presentation was the shoot 'em up titles. I actually thought they looked pretty competent, but perhaps after Amico releases and more games get pushed out, they'll be able to kind of swoon more gamers. But I'll admit, I thought the most appealing aspect aside of the shoot 'em ups was that they kind of had this $10 price point for a lot of the games digitally being purchased, which I think is a good idea. And then they also had the ban on like loot packs and things like that, which I thought was a cool from a consumer standpoint.
Yeah, but what I thought, because like the guy giving the presentation was Tommy Tallarico, who every time he's on something, he always brags about his accolades. Like I have the Guinness World Record for working on the most video games ever, because he does music and a bunch of other stuff. But if you look at his record of games, he has a lot of stuff that he was in charge of and ahead of that were shit. Like Advent Rising was a garbage game that didn't even get to complete its vision because it did so poorly. And he's also known from back in the day in the G4 Origin days, like where they had like 4 shows that they played on repeat. He was like a host of like 3 of them.
I don't even remember that. That's pretty ancient stuff, though.
every time I see that guy, I'm like, okay, what's he doing? What's he pitching this time? And I saw on this, like, he was bragging about his accolades. I'm like, but what have you made that's good? You've made a lot of stuff. Doing a lot of stuff doesn't mean you're gonna make good stuff. So,
yeah,
I mean, I can see the positives you're coming up with this, but to me, I'm like, this is just another console that somebody else is going to try and throw in there that's not going to get any real traction.
It kind of came across as like like the SNES Mini, but a reinvented one for Intellivision. Yeah, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it, but I think part of it is because I'm a retro gamer, so I like that aspect. I like the aspect of a more accessible console platform, right? Like when they showed this console off, when you play on Xbox or like a PlayStation and stuff, there's a lot of issues with having to connect your console to the internet, doing all these authorizations and stuff, even if you have a disc. Whereas, you know, these type of consoles are more simple pimple. You just kind of boot them up, connect, and you're pretty much in for the most part. Might have to create an account and something like that. But I think this more simplified approach. And clearly from the ad, for those who saw it, it was clearly geared more towards like older gamers who were kind of want a more simple approach.
Yeah, that's the thing is that like the NES Mini, the SNES Mini, the Sega Genesis Mini, that type of stuff, those sold on nostalgia of kind of our generation. This is trying to sell on the nostalgia almost of like the older generation that grew within television and all that stuff. But I don't see those guys buying a lot of these or a lot of those people around who spend money on this.
Yeah, I don't. I think it'll be one. It'll probably be like the Ouya. For
Yeah.
those who even remember that blip. But we'll see. Who knows? I mean, they had a stronger showing than I would say most in terms of software. But in television aside, you also had Take Two Interactive, which they had an extremely boring E3 panel. Basically, a Zoom call that didn't show any game footage, didn't announce anything new. I would only recommend watching this video if you have trouble sleeping. But we'll discuss some more stuff on this one later because we got some thoughts on this and how
Yeah, I
bad it
mean
was.
that was also one that was kind of hyped up. People were thinking, "Oh, cool! They'll maybe Take Two is going to be there. Maybe they'll announce Red Dead Redemption 2 upgrades for next gen. Maybe they'll announce Grand Theft Auto 6. Maybe they'll announce some new stuff from all these other publishers that they own." That wasn't the case.
Yeah, some people on Twitter were discussing they really wanted a remaster for Red Dead 1, which I thought would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, as soon as I played Red Dead 2, I'm like, just take Red Dead 1 and put it in this engine and give me the whole experience in one game. I'd play through the entire thing. It'd take me like 6 months to get through it, but I'd play through all of it.
Yeah, Red Dead 1 is really good. And yeah, I got thoughts on Red Dead 1 and 2 as well. But yeah, Red Dead 1 I think is the superior game between the two. Now, Take Two aside as well, Mythical Games, which I've never heard of these guys before, they came to the show showing a game called Blankos. This was the only game they showed, and it's a free-to-play platformer with lots of in-game customizable items, and this focus on vinyl toy designs as the basis behind the game. And if you don't know what vinyl toys are, you may have heard of a company called Funko Pop that really specializes in this area. And Blankos appears to be a new competitor to the Funko Pop, but I'm not really sure if this game or the toys has it really any demand in the gaming space, right?
Yeah, as we said, it's like every time you pitch a game, a movie idea, or something, the first question that should be coming out of anybody's mouth is, who's our customer? Who wants this? Is there a customer base for it? And then there's plenty of things you can do to like do customer research to find out if you have an audience. And like when we heard about this, I'm like, I don't think they asked anybody if they wanted this. This seems like somebody's idea of like, this would be cool, let's do this, and didn't think about who's gonna buy this, because I'm certainly have no interest in this whatsoever.
Yeah, the gameplay didn't look very good either. It looked like a very cheap, like almost like a web browser game, but with 3D. To me,
Yeah, but when you say it like that, like there's people who love RuneScape, which was a web browser game. There's people who love Roblox, which is very simplistic gameplay and movement, which is very targeted towards kids. I know some negative response was because this goes into the what's the NFT cryptocurrency thing.
yeah.
That some people were like, here you made a game for children and you're targeting kids with an NFT type of model. What the fuck are you doing? Like kids just play games type of thing. I don't think that's necessarily their intention there, but it does seem weird to start talking about that stuff when you have like this very basic type of game.
Yeah, and them having
It just
Dead
didn't
Mouse
look very
too.
interesting.
Yeah, remember
Yeah.
they had Dead Mouse?
Yeah. And Dead Mouse isn't even relevant, man. He was barely relevant in the mid-teens when like they had versions of him in Watch Dogs.
Yeah, he's more of a like a visual icon these days more than a music icon. But yeah, that's Blancos was very interesting to see because, like you said, who wants this? I don't really know. And like you said also about Sony, right? For those who just don't know, Sony has basically ceased attending E3 in lieu of having these private events for their own platforms and games. So, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into day one of E3 2021. And that started out with Gearbox, right? So Gearbox, actually Ubisoft presented first, but we're going to discuss Gearbox first because I feel like we'll kind of focus on like the lesser aspects of E3 going into the stronger aspects of it for each day. Gearbox showed Borderlands the movie as a topic of discussion. They didn't really show anything. They even blurred out somebody playing Tiny Tina. I'm not really sure what to think about this movie. It's going to be directed by Eli Roth. I didn't even know they were making a movie about it, and I'm not sure it was something people wanted, especially from Eli Roth.
Yeah, I was surprised when I found out they were making a movie, but it wasn't from. I heard about it before this though because I've been hearing casting releases of people playing different roles in it. Like, oh, they're actually making a movie. Okay, that's interesting. Don't know if it's going to be any good. You gotta wait till we see what a trailer or what something looks like. Because a lot of love of Borderlands is definitely the writing, which yeah, you could translate to a movie, but the biggest thing that sold Borderlands was its art style. So is this going to be an animated movie or a live action movie? If it's live action, okay, your writing has to be really, really solid, and costume design has to be done really, really well to make it work out. Is Eli Roth known for having really great writing and really great costume design in any of his movies? Not really.
I mean, he had Cabin Fever. I'll give him Cabin Fever, but I mean, all his work beyond that, the only thing he was even known for after. Bear in mind, Cabin Fever was like over a decade ago, right? The only thing he was known for afterwards was acting in Inglorious Bastards, and that's about it.
Well, he's known for Hostel, I
But
think.
it wasn't good, is what I'm saying.
And that's the thing. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Hostel wasn't good, but he's like the grandfather of he's like the father of modern day torture porn type of thing because of Hostel. So and then you take that concept, right? Like here's a horror director who's going to do Borderlands. Borderlands isn't necessarily a horror game, so what's this going to be about? And honestly, the writing from the writers at Gearbox themselves, Borderlands 3 is really kind of fucking boring and long and drawn out. Honestly, the best Borderlands game is Borderlands 2 that has the best villain and the best characters in there, which is a lot what they're bringing into this movie. But we, like I said, we don't know anything about it. It's weird to I think it's weird for them to go to E3 and say talk about a movie where this would be better fit for like Comic Con
Yes.
in San Diego or something.
Yeah, and they did have some other games. Like the only three games they showed besides, well, the only three games they did show, right? Because Borderlands was all movie stuff. Is Tribes of Midgard, which looked like a cheap Diablo game. I actually thought it was going to be a made for mobile type of game, right? Which isn't really a slant against mobiles. It just didn't look like it was graphically powerful or anything like compelling. But it's being released for consoles, right? And I mean, I personally don't have anything good to say about it from seeing it. It looks like something I've seen better executed on the 360, even, right? Like Dungeon Siege.
Yep.
There was Godfall, a hack and slash RPG similar to the God of War playstyle, but that's going to be exclusive to PS4 and PS5.
It's also not a very Godfall took forever for them to make. I remember seeing this at PAX and game conventions year after year after year, and it finally launched. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people like it. So it's not like a groundbreaking must buy console mover game either. So it's like, yeah, Godfall, we're adding more shit to it, and people are like, meh, Godfall, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, the only part I even liked about that presentation was if you buy it on PS4, you get it on PS5. Cool. But that was about my only positive thing there.
Is it you buy on PS4, you and PS5, or is it PS5 users get it free because they bought it on PS4?
Correct. So if you own it on
Okay.
PS4, you automatically get the upgrade.
Oh,
Because
okay.
bear in mind, people who don't have a PS5 and aren't familiar, PS4 games are backwards compatible with PS5, but they're not in the same way as the Xbox Series X games. Xbox Series X and S can play Xbox One games. It's automatically out of the box compatible with it. PS5
Yeah.
doesn't really have that same level of compatibility.
And that's the weird thing is that when you have to take something that's a common feature on your competition and make that a talking point for your announcements, like get with the program, guys. All games from last gen are playable on the next gen, and the only difference is that with Xbox, a lot of them get upres already just through the hardware, and PlayStation it's either it's going to play as a PS4 game on there, or you're going to either pay or in maybe some cases like this you might get a PS5 upgrade with by owning the previous game. They've only done that for very few games. He's like Spider-Man. If you had the PS4 version, you had to buy a PS5 version. They didn't give it to you for free. So it's like only few games on PlayStation's platform are going to have you automatically get the PS5 version for free, and it's going to be select games that they pick. Um, I don't know. Sony, like I said, Sony may have something up their sleeve, but we're not going to know until they actually do a presentation, maybe at the end of the month or later on. They're probably going to want to distance themselves from E3 for a while and then come up with a bunch of news. So they're the only thing everybody's talking about.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things were difficult this year because of obviously for COVID. Don't want to get into that because that's just such a touchy subject these days. But it did have implications because it's always hosted in LA at the convention center, and obviously I'm in San Diego, you're in Washington, in the Redmond area, so you're in a completely different circumstance than I am in terms of policy, and a lot of stuff was basically held back from events and whatnot. So no one really knew it was going to happen. So we got this all digital version of E3, which I think is part of the reason why maybe we didn't get to see a lot of games. But who knows?
But the other thing though is that like E3's been dying for years, right? It's been going downhill. People have been bailing out and doing their own things. Like literally, EA said we're not going to do E3, but then they opened up their own venue across the street from E3 a few years ago, and still did their announcements the same week. It's just they weren't doing it at an E3 venue. Where that's where I saw this going. Like E3 is going to die, and we're just going to get online conferences from everybody, which makes sense because they're cheaper to produce, put together, and you can still get all the same content out there. And you can do your own time slot and not have to fight for a time slot with the E3 schedule, right? You just don't have press doing hands-on gameplay and behind-door press screenings like you would at the E3 event. But it seems like nowadays society is like, hey, we're tired of the E3 world. We want something more direct and quicker to consume. So that's why I think these conferences is probably the way of the future. It's just this year seems like nobody was ready for anything.
Yeah, did seem like a scramble. Even like the other game Gearbox showed, Wonderlands, right, which is basically a franchise that's oriented around Tiny Tina, which is probably everyone's most favorite character in the Borderlands franchise. I mean,
Man, she definitely has her haters.
yeah, this is true. But I mean, it's when you look at the characters you play in Borderlands, they're kind of placeholder like characters. They don't really have much of a personality because you're supposed to step into their feet or their shoes, so to speak, and kind of take on that role. Whereas Tiny Tina, she really is a very personality-wise fleshed out character. And what they did show about it, I mean, I got those Peter Molyneux hype vibes when they showed Wonderlands, because I just saw a lot of hype around it, but they didn't see any gameplay, and they just gave a release date of 2022. I mean, you kind of had some thoughts on what you think it was going to be based around.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at it, I'm thinking, all right, cool, another Borderlands game, but it's not going to be the same thing that we've been getting with the Borderlands main franchise. What this is kind of based off of is that there was a DLC for Borderlands 2, which was Tiny Tina's Dungeons and Dragons game, which was actually in the Borderlands 2 story a really cool encapsulated story of like how Tiny Tina was mourning the loss of Roland, who had died, by going through this D&D campaign and trying to like save his life or something, because she's having a hard time dealing with the grief, right? But besides that, it was a really cool version of Borderlands in a D&D world, again, where the writing was spot on with all the jokes and everything. It felt like cool. They're gonna have the good writing. They have a huge seems like they're gonna have a huge cast of stars, which is a surprise for a Borderlands game because they're notoriously known for not using voice actors because they don't want to pay people guild prices. Yet they're going to pay all these Hollywood actors to be in their game. So maybe they got over that issue that they had. So we're going to have like Andy Samberg, Wanda Sykes. I wouldn't be surprised if Ice T is in there again somewhere, and a bunch of other people. But it looks like it's going to be kind of a mix and match of like Dungeons Dragon magic and weapon and gunplay uses, and they also give you the ability to actually make your own character this time instead of having to fall into the role of one of the Vault Hunters. That's all the information we have on those. So the concept and what I think it's going to be based on makes it sound like this should be interesting, but this is like one of those things where it's like, that's cool. I need to know more. Show me something actual, tangible, and then I can make a educated judgment on whether or not I want to get this. But again, release 2022, so we got plenty of time to wait for them to show us more. Basically, probably a year and a half, because it's probably be like a fall 2022 release.
Yeah, most likely, given Gearbox release timeframes, and it might even be delayed. So we'll have to see, because they didn't, like you said, they didn't show anything that was conclusive for people to get an idea. You know, I don't think pre-orders even open, so we'll see what happens in time. And that was Gearbox's overall presentation. Right now, Ubisoft, well known for being the games as a service developer, right? They've recently transitioned away from making these games that kind of like would come out every so often in a more regular cadence of new title. Maybe it's a sequel, maybe it's not, right? But even games like Assassin's Creed kind of took on more of a games as a service role, less frequent Assassin's Creed titles, but you did see your Assassin's Creed game of choice get more content over like a year or two, right? And that kind of was pretty much the pattern here, right? Like they showed Just Dance. I mean, another release in the title. Definitely not something we would play personally, and I'm not even sure who plays that type of game anymore. I mean, the last dance game I played was
Twitch
Dance
stream
Central
girls. Or people actually play that. Funny thing is, like when we have to test this game in game testing, for the stuff that we do work, I've had like some people like, this person sucks at dancing. We need to find somebody who can actually dance to play this game so they can actually do the testing we need. But like I think Just Dance is one of the few dance games that have survived because they've always been based off of tracking something else. So like originally they were on the Nintendo Wii, right? So you had the Wii remote to catch that. The competition to it was Dance Central, but Dance Central requires the Kinect. Dance Central games don't work anymore on any of the new consoles because you have to have a Kinect for it. Just Dance games works because now I think they let you program put the motions into your cell phone, like download an app, and it can track that your phone's moving, and that's how they track that you're doing the movements that you're supposed to be doing. So they're able to survive that way, which is kind of cool. There's a dancing game out there that does that. But like I said, the only people I ever see playing this is on Twitch. And it's the stream chicks that are like, hey, look, I'm going to dance in my bikini in the fucking hot tub.
Yeah, Twitch is a weird place, especially what you see get played versus what people actually play. And yeah, Just Dance, nothing really new, just really an update of the music more than anything. I didn't see any major differences in terms of the game design or whatnot. And I wouldn't expect that to be the case. You know, like Rock Band, they're not going to change the recipe because they're there to appease the fans as opposed to bring in new players, right? And then you had Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which had some updates to it. Really, they kind of announced bug fixes, improved gameplay, expanding on the existing gameplay. And what I personally love about that video is it basically seemed like an apology for the poor reception to the bugs and the issues found with the launch release title. I don't know if you caught it, but I can't remember what the lady said. She's like, we are like, glad to thank you for your patience as we did this. I'm like, that is not a strong way to advertise your game at E3, in my opinion.
And when one of the updates you're talking about is we're finally going to bring one-handed swords to the game, it's like, you had one-handed swords in like the last like 8 games. Why didn't it come out with this one when it came out? And why is that a specialized update? Like, motherfuckers, you take the games you had before and you make them better. You don't remove shit and then give it to us again and say, hey, you should be grateful for us adding this cool new feature for you that was in every other game prior. Honestly, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like, Courtney beat it. I did not. I got like 60 hours into it, and I am fucking done with that game. It is so much bloatware, so much unnecessary grind, and no storytelling at all in it. To where like everything they added here is like, cool. Here's more games of a service. Here's more bloated content for a game that's already over 150 hours of gameplay. Probably, it's not even worth me paying attention to. And I actually feel kind of bad because I actually have like all the Assassin's Creed games, and I usually buy them, and this is one that I bought to have the season pass for. I'm probably going to get all this content for free. I'm never going to play it because I just despise playing this game because it's just like somebody watched the Vikings show and wanted to make a game and then said, let's slap Assassin's Creed on it and then have nothing to do with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, this game, the way they talked about it, it just seemed like kind of like Halo Master Chief Collection, how we're going to do some updates to fix this so that the longevity of the game is strong, as opposed to, really making massive changes. It's more just there to kind of fix the quality control, and that was about it. I mean, we're talking about really a games as a service company, right? I mean, they also showed Avatar, right? Very much likely, they didn't really show too much, but likely to be another games as a service title in the world of Avatar. And the biggest issue for me with Avatar is humans in the Avatar universe, for those who are unfamiliar, have advanced technology. Why don't they just drone strike the inhabitants out of existence? Why do they have to fly in themselves and destroy the inhabitants to take over this land, right? There's so many issues with Avatar alone, and then we get into this game aspect, and I kind of just wonder, what are your thoughts on Avatar as a game?
I mean, they had an Avatar game when the movie came out, I believe, that was absolute garbage. And to me, this franchise is dead. The only person who thinks Avatar is cool is James Cameron, because he's still trying to make 2 more sequels to it. And honestly, like, I thought the movie was terrible. Only reason why we went to go see it, only reason why a lot of people went to go see it was because they were pushing this brand new 3D tech. So everyone wanted to see what that looked like. Guess what? It was meh. I'd rather watch a regular movie. So the storyline in Avatar is bad, and so basically it's a dead franchise that James Cameron's the only person who likes it. So I feel like, did you make this game just for James Cameron? So maybe he'll give you some money, because who wants this? Anybody that tells you that they love Avatar, ask them to name one character from that fucking movie. Tell them to name you the villain. They can't name you shit, dude, because nobody likes this movie.
The only people I know who can name more are people who went to the ride at, I believe it's at Disney World. That's about it. But yeah. It doesn't look very strong. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're in Avatar, I would say check it out. But I mean, they didn't really show any gameplay or anything. They showed some environment shots, and that was pretty much it.
And that's kind of the story, like, of things when E3s are bad. It's like usually like, hey, it's all CG trailers, and we've gotten past that point where people are impressed by CG or just pre-scripted videos, because we're like, yeah, it's pre-scripted. It's not showing me gameplay. This is all BS. Cool, you made a pretty cool looking video. Everything looks crisp, but we know the game's not going to be that. It's not showing gameplay. It barely even shows you concept of what they're going to be doing, because we've all been lied to in the past. So I really think these game developers and franchises and industry playmakers need to get away from doing CG trailers as teaser trailers and announcements. They need to like go right into, here's a movie trailer type thing for our game. Here's actual things that will happen in the game, versus showing me a cutscene that is completely fabricated that has nothing to do with what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of moving on with other Ubisoft titles. They showed Riders Republic, which a part of me is kind of interested in it, but at the same time not. For those who are familiar with their previous title, Steep, it's basically the summer version of that, whereas Steep was kind of in the snow mountains. You can snowboard. I can't remember what's when you wear like a flying raccoon suit and you fly down the mountain.
The wingsuit.
Wingsuit, thank you. They did stuff like that. Same stuff here, but now you're in the summer events. What I did like about it, though, is they kind of had the user interface and presentation of like a Forza Horizon, which I think actually does a really good job in this case. I didn't think it looked that polished in Steep, but maybe in this one it'll be better.
I mean, Ubisoft is turning into like EA is to sports, where the EA has all the official licensing for sports titles, basically. Ubisoft is becoming that for X Games stuff. That's why Steep did kind of fairly well. There's definitely a market for people who liked like SSX Tricky and snowboarding and all that stuff. There are people out there who like summer sports and summer like X Game type sports stuff. So it'll have its audience. It's just, to me, it feels like it's a niche audience. This is honestly a perfectly fine thing to have at E3 as like, hey, here's just another one of the games that we're coming out with this year. And it kind of like stuck in a montage. Nothing like you spent a ton of time on, which they don't think they really did. It's just, hey, this is coming out. So
yeah,
honestly, like a textbook E3 announcement, which finally.
Yeah, Rocksmith was another interesting one, right? I don't know if you own Rocksmith. I actually do own it, but I need to get a guitar to play it with again, because I don't have one here that works. But it's, for those who don't know, Rocksmith is a game that helps you learn to play an actual guitar in an entertaining way. And not much was actually shown. This was Rocksmith Plus. All they said is that it's coming to beta in the PC platform, and that select users can sign up for it and get into it. Not really much was shown, though. I'm curious to see where it'll go, because, I mean, I think the last one was 2016, right? Rocksmith 2016.
Yeah, what this sounds like to me, it sounds like it's like, here's all the Rockstar game content that we had, and we're bringing it to PC.
Yeah, we'll see.
Not that they're like doing anything new. Maybe they might get some more licensing to do new songs or whatnot. So I mean, like Rocksmith, they do have a good library of music. Like you can find just about anything mainstream in their game that you can learn how to play. I think the ultimate version of this is when I can look up any band I want, and the system can automatically transpose it into tabs and teach me how to play it. But there's licensing issues in the music industry and all that makes this difficult to do. But that's going to be the ultimate version of this type of game. Of, hey, teach me guitar, teach me drums, teach me whatever. Hey, here's a song I like. I want to put it in your search engine, and then boom, you find it, and you transpose it into any instrument I'm trying to learn how to play.
You know, I do like the idea of how you can like upload your own MP3 or wave and then have it decode the tabs. But what I actually would love to see out of a Rocksmith title is real multiplayer where you can jam out. Not necessarily like play the same song, right? Maybe you could have that too as like a basis for getting people started. But I think it'd be cool if like, let's say I'm playing bass and you're playing guitar standard, right? Not necessarily drop D or anything crazy, right? But you're sitting there playing guitar, I'm playing bass, and then like we kind of jam together and kind of play songs and kind of make that as a way to introduce people to other people, and so people can make more music, and then maybe you can use that as a way to record your own music on the platform. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud because I think there's a lot of potential with a game like that. The moment you kind of put like when you think about Rocksmith, it's not really a game, right? It's really this application that lets you learn guitar, play it through your TV. So you're not really doing it through an amp, but you could also use different sort of distortions and things like that to make the sound different, right? Like I don't have like a God, I'm trying to remember the guitar that the guy has from Franz Ferdinand, but it's like a guitar from like 1956, and it has a very unique sound to it. It's not really made anymore. I could mimic that through the game, and that would be a cool aspect to kind of have, right? Just kind of have people play that way. There's a lot of potential there, but like we said, there's not much shown.
Yeah, like I said, it's Rocksmith is a unique thing because it's an educational game that's pretty cool, and it's taught. I know a lot of people who have actually learned how to play guitar through those games, so it does work. It's just it's a game that it's an educational tool basically, which I think could go places, but it's almost doesn't fit in the game industry because it's an educational tool versus an actual game. It'd be like if you gamified surgery for doctors. Like, yeah, you can learn how to do surgery, but it's like, yeah, but I don't want to be a doctor, so I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You know?
Operation, but like real life difficulty. Yeah. You know, and kind of moving on from Rocksmith, right? They showed Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which is another collaboration between Nintendo and the Rabbids characters, and it looks like another lighthearted title in the Rabbids series. Definitely focused on kids and family gaming. I'm not personally interested in it, but I mean, what are your thoughts?
It was the first Mario and Rabbids game was a sleeper hit, and it's like an underrated title that a lot of people actually say is really good and a lot of fun, especially people who like. I think it's kind of like a strategy game where characters move around like kind of like they do in XCOM, but it's the Mario and Rabbids characters. So I mean, it has its fan base, and it makes sense that they're making a sequel to it. The thing that sucks is that Nintendo took the thunder out of Ubisoft by leaking this before the like a day or two before the conference by putting it on their store page.
I didn't know.
So
that.
it's like, yeah, so Nintendo had already like pre-leaked it, and so everybody saw it was coming. So it lost its hype appeal or excitement from the announcement because everybody knew it was coming.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean it's definitely good. I would actually equate Rabbids as being like a Lego franchise where they kind of take an existing franchise and translate it through Lego. I actually feel like the Rabbids though is a little better than Lego because to me it's more interesting in the humor and fun execution side of it. Now Ubisoft also did show a game that I'm a bit tepid on. I want to like it, but I have issues with it overall. But Life is Strange: True Colors, which is another addition to the Life is Strange franchise, and if you're a fan of the series, I definitely recommend checking it out. But personally, I always want to like these type of games, but the problem is they tend to be predictable decision trees with pleasing aesthetics. And I played the first two, and I did beat the first one. I got about halfway through the second one, but the problem was I got bored because there's this strong focus on drama, and I'm really not attracted to drama being portrayed in any aspect. I'm okay with, like, let's say you blend drama with horror, drama with action. That really works for me. But when drama seems to be the focus on things, I tend to avoid it because I personally don't like to spend time focusing on drama, let alone listening to people that bring unnecessary drama into my life. And to me, like, this game kind of seemed like a
This is not the game for you then.
Yeah.
This game is all about empathy and feeling empathetic for other people's emotions and states of minds. But I agree with you. Like, Life is Strange, like, I played through the first one, and I actually think that one's really good because it's a mixture of drama and like a mystery. Like, there's a murder mystery and like a killer going around, that type of stuff, mixed in with the drama of your friend who's kind of an asshole trying to redeem themselves, right? And then this time power that you kind of have. I think that's really cool. That first one was good. There's a lot of contention on what ending you pick there. I know a lot of people who heard that I let my friend die and save the town. Like, what do you mean? You're supposed to let your friend live and destroy the town. It's like, why would I kill thousands of people for one person who finally decided to take responsibility for their shitty behavior? But that's the first game, which I think that one's worth looking at. The second game, like you played through about half of it. I got through maybe an episode and a half to where I stopped because I'm like, this isn't realistic. No random person is going to find two kids out in the mountains and is just going to help them run away. Whenever like characters in these types of real life storytelling games start doing things that don't make sense, and it's obviously being done to further a plot, I get disinterested because it's like nobody really does that. That's not how this would work. You're just doing shit so you can have your plot, and then I'm not interested anymore in that. This one does look somewhat interesting. You are given another like power, although I think the first game with having the ability to change time, stop time and slow it down type of stuff, or reverse it, was more interesting than this one, where you're a character who is like, I guess she's moving into a town where her brother lives, I guess reconnecting, but her brother ends up dying, and she's trying to find out how he died or who killed him. So it has a little bit of that mystery in there, which I think is good because they're going back to the roots of the first game. But the main power here is that she has a psychic ability to feel other people's emotions and empathize with them. So if like you don't like drama, I feel like there's going to be a lot of drama in this game. Yeah. The whole point is I'm going to have to feel what this person's feeling to understand why they feel that way, and then try and use that to manipulate them to either give you information or help you find out what had really happened to your brother. I think the music looks good and all that. I think this game will probably get a lot of criticism from the side that says, hey, this game is too woke, it's trying to be too PC or whatnot, which it may be, who knows, I don't know. I feel like it's going to have a lot of drama. I want to see more of how the gameplay actually works and how the story goes, because like I said, as soon as these stories take a route where somebody makes a decision that clearly makes no sense, I'm checked out already and I won't finish it. And this was another one where it could very well go that way, where it's like, hey, my brother was murdered, and the cop says, well, I'm not going to investigate that. It's like, well, that's not what would happen. You would investigate that. It's your fucking job.
Yeah. The only thing I remember outright from the clip they showed in terms of like the gameplay is like you're playing this lady, right? And then the guy walks up to you, that this is your friend, and he's like telling you, hey, look, man, I don't really want you to bring up this stuff with her because it's going to ruin issues with my relationship. And then it
breaks up his relationship or whatnot.
Yeah, and then it cuts to like him talking with her, and then the girl asks you, like, what do you think about this? And you could choose to be like, oh, I'm busy, I got to go back to work, or telling her the truth. And I was just like, do people really have this issue with telling people the truth? Like,
I don't know. We talk about it later, but I got some thoughts on things like that. It's a much longer conversation that I've noticed, especially living up here in Washington.
I don't know. It's just, to me, I think if you're going to be a good person, you're always honest with people, even if you're not liked because of it. But that's part of the why I felt like issues with this drama-oriented focus of these later titles. Like you said, the first one I think is really good. Life is Strange. That came out back on the 360, which shows you how old the franchise is, right? The second one, I didn't think it was absolutely terrible. I just, like you said, I just didn't feel like the writing was there. And this one kind of feels like in the same vein, but I feel like every character in the clip was like, these are my feelings, please don't do this. These are my feelings, please don't do this. I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people? Like,
yeah, it feels like having a really shitty superpower, a feeling of being able to know that people have secrets, or they're being mean to somebody. And it's like, well, now that I know this information, should I do something about it? It's like, well, it's none of your fucking business, so maybe you shouldn't do anything about it. You let them live their lives and make their own decisions.
Yeah, it's this weird, like, you're supposed to be accountable for other people's actions thing. I just didn't like it. I didn't get the woke vibes, but maybe some people are seeing it where I'm not. But it just, to me, seemed a lackluster drama.
That's the thing, is that I don't feel like if it's overly woke, but I feel like a lot of people are gonna pull that out of it, thinking that that's what they're trying to go for because that's the trend of stuff nowadays. That it might get a lot of criticism for that, but like I said, we have to see more of what the story is, how that gameplay actually works, how these powers actually come into play, more so than just I can tell when somebody's angry or when somebody's sad, and how they can manifest themselves in a more action-oriented way, and where this mystery goes. Because if the mystery is good, if you can tell a decent story with it, then it's going to be a decent game. But it also feels like they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle multiple times because the first game was really good,
Mm-hmm.
and they've just kind of failed with every time so far of trying to recreate that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And you know, kind of talking about another title that's very much lightning in a bottle, right? Far Cry 6. This has been previously announced and shown to some degree. They did expand some of the gameplay footage and cinematics, and it definitely gives the vibe of a Fidel Castro revolutionary Cuba feeling, right? And you have Giancarlo Esposito continuing this trend of playing gangsters in franchises.
Yeah.
And I really like Giancarlo. I think he's really good. I think he's always been compelling in anything he does. Um, they haven't shown too much in terms of the story other than he clearly has a son that wants to escape, and I do like the grittiness of it. Opening, it kind of reminded me of Far Cry 4 in some degrees. um, but I'm curious to see what they do differently. I haven't really seen much announced in terms of the co-op. I feel like that's the greatest strength of the Far Cry series is co-op, but only in Far Cry 5 was the co-op really 100%. Far Cry 4, it was like partially co-op, but anytime you did things story-wise, you had to tell your buddy to jump out so you could go do that stupid thing and then come back and be like, all right, jump back in and let's go do a raid or something like that. Um, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Far Cry 5 had really good multiplayer. I feel like Far Cry 6 to me, and the problem with the Far Cry franchise is that they need to do something different with it. And they've tried that in the past, and some have succeeded, some have failed. Like Far Cry Blood Dragon, which was basically Far Cry 3 with a reskin on it, had a cool, like, unique story, was very funny. It fit for what it was trying to do. Far Cry 5, I think, was really good, and had a good story with son. Far Cry, what's the one that's called? It's like New Something, where basically it's the sequel to Far Cry 5, but it's after the nuclear waste has like gone away and everything's mutated. Um, that's somewhat interesting. They added some elements, but the one element that all the Far Cry games have is the same elements that they've shown here, right? You have pets that can fight for you and attack, possibly. You'll have fortresses or strongholds that you'll have to take out and recapture. And you're fighting against one bad protagonist, which is usually somebody who's, like here, we have a really good actor doing it. He's probably going to do a really great role. But I feel like it's just the same shit I've already seen already. And it does this one thing which they do a lot for third world countries, whether it be in movies or video games. Everything's fucking brown and orange, and that really turns me off because, like, that's boring. These places have color. There's more than just brown and orange and dirt and and just grime in these areas. Give us a realistic version of what it looks like. But like this doesn't seem that interesting to me, and that's maybe might be because like games that I can't get a vested interest in behind the protagonist, I won't be interested in. I would say like call it the last Call of Duty game, not Call of Duty Cold War, but the one before that is the prequel to Call of Duty Modern Warfare. But really, you don't care because it's about a war in another country that the U.S. isn't even involved in. You're just kind of a rogue soldier who goes off and does shit, so it doesn't really matter, right? That's kind of why I feel like Far Cry 6 is like, it's a conflict in a country I don't care about. Has a kind of probably a cool actor playing the villain, but are you delivering me anything new that I haven't seen in the Far Cry series other than the fact that I can play as a female character or a male character? It doesn't seem like it. It still seems like I can get different types of animals to fight for me. I have to do strongholds, and then I'll end up taking out the big boss towards the end. There'll probably be some drug-infused scenario where everything gets all trippy and everything, and then you'll be able to play that. I think the other thing that they announced was with Far Cry 6, there's a mode which is going to let you play as the Far Cry villains of the past, as Voss, as the Far Cry 4 villain, and as the father guy in Far Cry 5. And it's like... It's very attuned to how these games have a sequence in them where your character gets high on drugs of some sort and has a really weird trip where they're fighting somebody or going through something, which is usually really cool sequences in these games because they stand apart from it. They're taking that and making it a whole separate like DLC little thing with it. It just feels like this franchise is getting old, and haven't shown me anything that I haven't already seen, so I'm not super interested in Far Cry 6.
Yeah, it definitely looks like more of the same, but with a different atmosphere. So I mean, I think fans will find it enticing, but I want to wait and see more personally. Maybe it'll be like a Game Pass thing I jump on, but that's just my vibe with it.
Yeah.
And kind of talking about, I know you mentioned the DLC, right, with the drug scenes in Far Cry, Rainbow Six Extraction, which originally, for those who don't know about it, it's basically a mode in Rainbow Six Siege where you played this co-op mode that was like Left 4 Dead, and it takes place in Rainbow Six universe, and it was originally a seasonal release that would come to Rainbow Six Siege. Now, they've taken this and made it a standalone release called Rainbow Six Extraction, meaning it'll cost you $60. So, it's clearly an expansion of the previous efforts with a deeper gameplay and story. But the question for me remains is what the story is going to be. They kind of just showed these character dynamics of like, hey, we got to go get them out and this and that. Okay, cool. What's even going on, right? Why is this infection happening? Why are we getting rid of it? Why are we involved?
Yeah, that's the thing is that like those things they had in Siege, we actually played some like the one with the alien invasion or whatnot. That was actually a lot of fun to go through and play and have the different type of enemies you had to take out. If they make something like that in the Rainbow Six Siege engine and mechanics, that I think can be fun. But like you said, Left 4 Dead is very easy. Zombies, boom, everybody knows what's at stake there, right? And then you have special infected that they kind of threw as a surprise. This again is gonna be like, well, you can't just copy Left 4 Dead. You need to have at least some, and it sounds like you're going to have a story here, so have some decent writing if you're not going to use a simple concept that everybody can just follow. So again, I'd have to see more what they do, and this would be something I might not pay full price for. I'll just wait and check out at a later date, maybe, depending on what people are saying about it.
Yeah, I got the inkling that it might be influenced by the fact that Back for Blood was announced a while back. It wasn't shown until this E3, right? But it was announced. And then you also
Yeah.
had GTFO, which is made by the creator of the Payday franchise, right? Except with GTFO, it's a very, very hardcore four-player co-op survival game, and it's very hard to survive. The enemies change from each time you play, and you have to adapt to the scenarios. You have limited munitions, things of that nature. We'll see if it kind of follows that same vein. I feel like Rainbow Six Extraction is going to be more approachable than GTFO, but we'll see. It's still a little early to call it. They haven't really shown too much.
I mean, as long as it's a game that I think either you can kind of try and solo a little bit, or you can easily matchmake and people and everybody works together, will be fun. I've had fun playing Rainbow Six Siege before. I had more fun when we played co-op modes that they had thrown in there like this versus just playing against other teams because it's one of those games where people take it way too seriously. It's like playing golf with somebody who thinks they're a golf pro and they get pissed off at every little fucking thing that goes wrong. So it's definitely has you don't have to be in the right mindset to play. That's why it's not a game I have in my normal rotation just because it's like it's fun for a little bit. I've experienced what it has to offer. I'm kind of done with it now.
Yeah, great game design, I would say. I think it's kind of the game, in my opinion, to dethrone Counter Strike in terms of its authenticity of the scenarios that it takes. But yeah, it does get old for me. It's definitely a hardcore game. But that was day one, right? We're talking just Gearbox and Ubisoft. That was day one of E3 this year. Day two, they did have a little company with one game announced, which was 24 Entertainment's Naraka Blade Point. And this game, I'll be brief about this one really. The combat was similar to Ninja Gaiden, but the gameplay was very much akin to Black Desert. So you kind of have this like action RPG sort of environment and gameplay and leveling up system it looked like, but the combat is definitely heavier on the action than Black Desert was. It looked more like a Ninja Gaiden, which I thought was cool. I don't think it's really for me in terms of my times constraints, but I think it's great for hack and slash RPGs with a loot sort of background. Might be something you're interested in, but be warned, the gameplay did look repetitive.
And that's the thing is like Black Desert's action gameplay always looks really good, but when you play it, it's fucking repetitive.
Yeah.
It's hitting the same button over and over again to get those action moves, and it doesn't feel as good. If we could get a Ninja Gaiden game again that was as not as hard necessarily as hard, but as technically cool as like the original Ninja Gaiden was, like Ninja Gaiden Black and whatnot, that would be cool to see something like that. But and I know nothing like that's in development at the moment. But maybe this would be something to look at. I've never heard of 24 Entertainment. I did not see this game at all, so we'll have to check it out.
Yeah, graphically it wasn't like a powerhouse, but I think it was competent, and the design didn't look too sloppy. It looked like it could be interesting if polished the right way, I would say. But it looked like it was maybe around 70 to 80% there. And now that really takes us to the biggest hitter, I think, in terms of showing the most content. Not really the most new stuff, but the most content in E3, and that was Xbox and Bethesda. Now, Microsoft acquired Bethesda recently, and now Xbox includes the Bethesda line of games. And starting off here, one of the games they showed was a game called Atomic Heart. Not really sure what the heck it was about. The only vibes I got was the presentation had a cross between Bioshock, Metro, and Prey, which is a lofty claim, by the way.
Yeah, and I feel like they showed a little bit of this probably last year too, but they didn't show a whole. But it's still, again, we have no idea what the story is, no idea what it is. It's a first person type shooter like game, possibly. No idea what world it takes place in or anything about it. So, again, this is to me feels like here's a game tease that's a game that's 5 years away. We're not going to see anytime soon, maybe.
Yeah.
Unless they put a release date on, which I don't know if they did. I think they just showed it. One of the big things about the Bethesda Xbox show, though, is I think they showed like 30 something games, and like 28, 29 of them are all going to be in Game Pass day one. So their biggest thing, again, is they're pushing Game Pass like crazy because, of course, they would. Is that all these a majority of these games will come out, and if you have Game Pass, you'll be able just to play them. You won't have to go and pay the $60 for per title, which will be good for you if you have that, or it will entice people to jump onto the Game Pass bandwagon, which I think you can still do $1 upgrade now to Game Pass Ultimate for 3 months. So, as you know, we like Game Pass. You should try it. If you haven't tried it, you should get it and tell us what you think. But
Yeah, that's how I played Doom
Atomic Heart,
Eternal.
yeah, because like Atomic Heart, like they didn't tell us much. It just looked interesting. It looked like it had like, some cool creature designs in this futuristic world, but we have nothing about it really.
Yeah, not much was even shown in terms of story, so we'll have to see. And that kind of also applies to this next game, right? Redfall. Looks like a co-op game against vampires. They didn't show any gameplay. We just had this nice cinematic trailer. I personally think we need to wait for more, show some in-game footage perhaps before we even begin to form any opinions of it. I was kind
Yeah, I
of
feel
tepid.
yeah, I feel like it's a cool concept because it's like this is the last thing that they showed in the show. Um, and so I felt like okay, they're making a Left 4 Dead, but instead of zombies, vampires. That could be interesting. I don't know exactly how, but I want to know more. And really, all it did was pique everybody's interest. So I'm interested in seeing what they show for this more so and how the gameplay works. The concept seems interesting because it's kind of a big question mark of how do you make fighting vampire hordes or vampires and their thralls interesting in a 4-player co-op. But we'll check it out. It's being made by, I think, Arcane Studios, right?
I can't remember.
Who are the same people who did like Prey and like Dishonored and whatnot. Because like some of the powers that they showed people were using were very reminiscent of what I remember seeing in Dishonored. So definitely not the same universe, something completely new. So that's why it's piqued everybody's interest. But we know nothing about it. It's just a CGI trailer, no gameplay or anything that they've shown.
Yeah, and kind of earlier when we started this, right? A lot of expansions, a lot of sequels, right? Fallout 76, the Pit expansion, just a teaser trailer was shown. We'll have to see more later. Elder Scrolls Online, receiving a quality enhancement for the Xbox Series X and S. Other Worlds 2, another teaser trailer that literally makes fun of the fact that it's a teaser trailer.
Honestly, I think that's one of my favorite trailers of the show was Outer Worlds. Because one, I played Outer Worlds, and it's actually a really, really good game. Has multiple endings. Different like really true like RPG character builds. Like you can build a stupid character, you can build a very intelligent character. They have a stupid character ending. They have the perfect ending type of thing. I'd say the biggest flaw with their original game though is that if you got to the end game, you couldn't you couldn't backtrack unless you had a save prior to like do the extra DLC that came out. Basically, when the game's over, the game's over. There's no playing in the universe anymore after that. Which hopefully they'll fix with this. But basically, this trailer was probably the best one because it was satire about E3, right? Because it's all just explaining like, now I'm going to show you slow motion because it looks cool and people running, and then here we're going to see our hero, but we don't really only see a silhouette because nothing's been designed but the titles.
Yeah,
so this game is definitely a few years away, but Outer Worlds is a fun game, and if you haven't played it, I would definitely suggest trying it. It's definitely a kind of a cool RPG style game, very reminiscent of like a Fallout game to me, and it was the Fallout like art style, but definitely a lot better and a lot more substance to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the advertising around it was pretty precise because it's one of the few times where I personally don't like it when a game is advertised like let's say 4 years before release because then you kind of like get dull of the hype and then you're kind of not excited by the time it comes out. And in this case, they made it funny. You know, it was almost like a Super Bowl commercial where it's like, oh, this is pretty funny. You know, I might not buy the product, but at least I was entertained. And this is kind of in that same regard. We'll see though. You know, pretty early. They didn't even announce a date or a year, so we'll see how that goes. A Plague Tale: Innocence. That's a sequel to the first title. Essentially, another teaser trailer during an Xbox showcase. Not really much shown. Looked like cinematics, not in game.
Yeah, I haven't played A Plague's Tale. People who have said it's really good, but I didn't play it originally because it seemed like a kind of a slow, methodical type paced game. Very heavy on the story, which can be good. I don't know. It must have done well enough for them to make a sequel to it, which looks interesting. Um, you can see my actual reaction to everything on the Xbox list here with the stream that I did of watching this. But a lot of people seem to be pretty excited about A Plague Tale: Innocent. So I guess it did. The first child did pretty well. I have to check that out still.
Yeah, I'm curious how it'll form. I didn't play the first one either, but I did like watching playthroughs and seeing the dynamic of the rats. I thought that was a
Yeah.
very interesting. Like I can only imagine the time and care it took to program that. It was very interesting to see that many rats kind of move around under your control. But we'll see. Grounded, another work in progress game, right? But this one was under Xbox's game preview banner, right? Which is kind of like a in preview early. Like I can't remember what they call it on Steam, but like it's like a game you can play early, but it's not. It's still in like alpha or beta.
It's like early access, but like on Xbox, you basically buy the game as early access, and then you get the whole game when it's done. I've played the first Grounded demo, which was actually fairly short, and they've expanded it a lot since then. And then this is just more like, hey, we're expanding it even more, adding more stuff. It's basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the video game,
Yeah,
with your friends.
literally.
Um, I would say it's it's not for me per se because I've played through part of it, and it's like I'm not for games that will require some type of base building and stuff like that. But it is a cool aesthetic. They do a good job of making insects terrifying because you're small, they're bigger than you and whatnot. Um, so it's an interesting game. I think kids would like it, but it's basically Honey I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, it's not the most it's like strongly designed in terms of gameplay and combat, but I do think it's like a nice, fun little romp to kind of play through a game in a lighthearted manner. It's not very challenging.
Yeah,
They also showed Diablo 2 Resurrected, which is a remastering of the original PC title. But I think what's disappointing as a fan of Diablo 2 back in the PC days is Blizzard, which is funny, this is in the Xbox, right? This is a Blizzard title, but they seem to have done minimal remastering and somewhat disappointing for those who do enjoy the original. And I would check out the footage if you're interested in it to get a good idea. But to me, it just seemed more of a game that's being made for people who never played it and now they can have access to it, or people that just want an HD version.
yeah. I think well, when I was streaming this, I believe M came into my stream and she wasn't too impressed with this title. I was like, oh well, I really like Diablo 3. I mean, Courtney liked it quite a bit because it's a good couch co-op game. But I was like, cool. They upgraded the graphics. So it's going to look as good as Diablo 3. Does not look
No.
as good. But it definitely looks better than the original PC version, right? So like I say, it's like an HD version. Blizzard obviously didn't do a ton of work on it. If you like the Diablo thing, it might be worth checking out. I have no idea what the price on it's going to be. But I don't know, who knows. I'm kind of interested in it because I like Diablo 3 and I've never played Diablo 2. So we might check that one out. But I get the feeling like, especially with a lot of the games on this list and a lot of stuff that Xbox and everybody showed, it's like, yeah, these games don't look like they're next gen. Why don't they
Yeah.
look like they're next gen? A lot of comments in my stream was like, wow, that PS2 game looked great.
It did. I'm not gonna lie. Diablo 2 looked pretty rough. I like when they're showing the 3D designs of the characters moving around the environment. I was like, oh, cool. Like you said, like I wasn't hoping for Diablo 3, but I was hoping something in that ballpark. And no, this looked like a 360 version of Diablo 2 to me, at best.
Yeah.
Really disappointing. But like I said, it's really, I think it's really more for people who never played it. They get an HD version. Maybe later on they'll update it. Who knows? But I haven't been too fond of Blizzard lately. Kind of going on with more sequels too. We got Slime Rancher 2, which is the sequel to the previous title. It looks like the series will continue its cute art style, lighthearted themes, and whatnot. Um, but it just looks like it expands upon previous concepts of the first game. Not too much was shown. I didn't think the story was very rich in the first one. I didn't play it too much, but I think it's a good like lighthearted game for like kids to play. I would
Yeah,
definitely give
Slime
that a
Rancher
go.
definitely has its own fan base, and I think this is great for those people who like that game. They'll get a kick out of a sequel for it.
Yeah, and then we also had Age of Empires, right? The sequel to the ongoing series, and now coming in HD. But it didn't seem visually stunning. It was a little weird. Another
Dude,
360
it's
looking
it's
title.
really weird. I have this weird relationship with Age of Empires. I've interviewed for like 20 jobs for this title in the past like 2 years, and like I don't like I wouldn't say I purposely bombed the initial phone interview. I'm just like people contact me about this. I'm like I know nothing about Age of Empires. I'm not that interested. Like the Age of Empires team, they are like all fanboys and like girls of this series. I think the thing with Age of Empires is that there's a whole generation that played this game in school, like we played Oregon Trail. Like this is their Oregon Trail, and they fucking love it. I look at this game like this looks like Civilization. It looks like any war real time game type thing. It doesn't look interesting at all to me. I don't understand what the hype behind it is, but people who love Age of Empires love this shit. So more power to them, but it's definitely not for me.
Yeah, it's definitely for the real time strategy crowd, but it didn't seem to be as strong as some of the previous titles. I mean, I didn't even think it looked as strong as Halo Wars.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't feel like Age of Empires adds anything new other than like what Civ does. Here, we've added another civilization to the list of civilizations you can play as. It's not like they can add new technology to fight with because they're keeping it all in like a certain time period. So the cool thing about Civ is that Civ goes from like medieval times all the way up to space era, and if you get to space, you win. I don't think Age of Empires does that. It's just you have to conquer the world or something. So I don't find it that compelling, and it's like there's not a whole lot you add to it.
Yeah,
Other than making things run smoother, which again is like great. This PS3 or 360 game runs really well on this new hardware that can do so much more than what you're using it for.
yeah, we'll have to see. I'm kind of curious to see how it'll go, and kind of going into the next part of this list here with Xbox. This is where I think the games start to get more compelling, right? Somerville, is spelled Somerville. Looks like a small game with a minimalist art style. Seemed to be a game where you're avoiding disasters and deadly creatures, but not too much was shown. But I'm sure we'll see more next year at E3, most likely before it releases in 2022. But
Yeah,
it
it
looked
seemed very
interesting.
reminiscent. It looked like reminded me of like Limbo or I forget what the other game was that the Limbo creators made. It reminded me a lot of like those types of games.
Inside.
Yeah, Inside and Limbo. That's what it gave me the feel of. So that should be interesting. The next game they're talking about was 12 Minutes, which this one has a lot of hype about it because it's a game where you're playing a 12-minute loop over and over, and there's different variations of what happens in those 12 minutes, I guess, depending on what you do. I would still have to see more of it for me, really. But I mean, like Microsoft has been hyping 12 minutes like crazy. Like every time they talk about it as if it's the next revolutionary thing. But it's like, again, it's a game that's more concept than it is visuals because this is not a visually demanding game. It's a concept game where I feel like it's more of an indie title, but it must be an indie title that they're really impressed with it. They want to tote it around like this.
Yeah, it was definitely. I think when they were advertising it, I thought was they were more advertising the voice actors behind it rather than the actual
Yeah,
gameplay.
Willem Dafoe I think is in it.
Yeah, I can't remember the other two, but I mean we'll see. It's pretty early, So I would say the same thing kind of applies for Hades, right? That isometric roguelike title. I personally didn't observe anything unique about it, but I think roguelike people would rarely want to check it out.
Well, it's very popular in PC. I think it's one of the biggest games this year that came out that everybody was raving about on its storytelling and how it plays. I am not a fan of roguelike games per se because it's very repetitive, but I am interested in playing this because everybody has been raving about it. I want to at least try it out. But I'm not interested in playing this on a PC, so I'll definitely maybe check it out on a console.
Yeah, and I think that comes next to the most hype game for many years now, Starfield, which is a Bethesda title, right? Another teaser trailer, essentially. Not much was really shown. I'm assuming it may not meet its release date of November 11th, 2022. And although we're 18 months out of that, they literally advertise this game as being 25 years in the making from the creator of Skyrim and Fallout 4.
And that's the thing is that when they announced this game, Bethesda also went through the trouble of sitting there saying, we're not working on Elder Scrolls 6 until Starfield's done. So everybody's like, get Starfield out so we can see Elder Scrolls. Because we all want we all want the sequel, want the next Skyrim game. We don't give a shit about online Elder Scrolls. And we don't care about what's going on with Starfield, really. We want to see the next Elder Scrolls game. Starfield, what they showed us, didn't give us any inkling. Is this going to be like Skyrim? Is it going to be like Fallout? We just saw astronauts walking on a planet. A lot of people have made the reference of this is like Interstellar, the video game, because things are a lot more realistic. But we have no idea what it's about. We don't know if there's base building in it, and that's what your whole purpose is. We don't know if you're exploring new worlds or if it's like a Star Trek thing and you're trying to find new life or what. They didn't show us anything. And like for a game like, oh, okay, so this isn't going to release for a year and a half. That means maybe in 6 months we might see some gameplay. Hopefully they show us something interesting, because right now I just want the next Elder Scrolls game and not this.
Totally agree. And yeah, even when they showed Back for Blood, I know that's not really a Microsoft or Xbox or Bethesda game, but it is coming from the makers of Left 4 Dead and Turtle Rock Studios. Personally, though, I think it's really hard to follow up on a game that really had as much of an impact on the industry as Left 4 Dead. And this game kind of came as a bit of a disappointment when they finally did show it. But maybe, hopefully, when they show more, it'll be more convincing. But Evolve didn't really give me a very convincing idea that this is going to be really compelling. But I mean, it's still more of that zombie type of dynamic. Gamers will see a return of asymmetrical versus gameplay, but it just didn't seem very strong to me.
Yeah, and this is the other thing, is that it's being produced by WB Games. But one of the things here is that when they first announced Back for Blood, it was like, hey, it's Left 4 Blood, but we're going to have like 20-story tall zombies you have to fight. From what I saw, and this is like, oh, all right, they're big, but they're not that big.
Yeah.
They're not giants that we're fighting. This doesn't feel as massive as they were telling me. And then from what I heard from like some development diaries that I've heard in interviews that I was listening to prior to E3, is that WB might end up fucking this whole thing up, because they keep they were talking about doing promotions much like back in the day with like, hey, if you pre-order it from here, you'll get this. If you get it from here, you'll get this, and this. And if you do this package, you'll get this, and just complicating the fuck out of it to the point that where people are like, I don't know what the fuck to buy. How do I get everything?
Yeah, it's
and there might not.
It's like
there might not be a way to buy it and get everything. So it's like, well, then what the fuck? So who knows? I heard there's a lot of balancing being done with the multiplayer from the betas, but we'll have to see. I want to see more of this and more actual gameplay before I jump in, because otherwise it just looks to me like it's Left 4 Dead with the same special infected and like one extra one that's giant.
Yeah.
But it's not as giant as I thought it was going to be,
Yeah, it definitely felt lackluster, but I think that's because you have those prolific expectations following Left 4 Dead. And then we also had Among Us, which, I mean, granted the game's already out. It was basically just a release date for, or an announcement that it's coming to Xbox, but I didn't see a release date given on the launch video.
That's the thing, too. It's like, it's been announced for Xbox for the past year. It's been on PC and people have been playing it like crazy. It's like, cool, I want to play Among Us. I'm waiting for it to come on console. They announced a new map that came out on June 15th for PC, or the platforms it's currently on, but no launch date given for console. It's like, this is already, I think, on the Switch. It's on PC. It's on mobile. It's on everything possible. It can't be that hard to make this thing run on a console. What the hell's the holdup here, guys? Just release it already.
Yeah, I feel like by the time it'll release, it'll be like when PS4 got PUBG.
Yeah, like nobody cares.
Yeah. Battlefield 2042, though, that one was interesting for me. I know we kind of had some mixed both of us had some mixed feelings on that one, but it seemed like a beefed up version of Battlefield's combat. But I did like the idea that they're saying it's up to 128 players. And what's interesting about that specific thing, up to 128 players, right, is I haven't seen that many players in a single PvP match since PS3's MAG title, which was fun but extremely chaotic. It felt like you were reenacting the ending of the film Glory every 5 minutes. You'd basically get shot to hell by large squads. So we'll have to see how they handle that, right? Because that's to me the biggest issue of what MAG was is I would roll around in a squad of like 30 guys. We would go mow them down, but then eventually we'd get down to 2 of us, and then we'd just get slaughtered by another squad of 30 guys. So I'm not sure how they'll handle spreading out the players and prevent player frustration so that gamers aren't dealing with these constant uneven situations. And like you said when we talked about this offline, there's no campaign, so the focus here is 100% on multiplayer.
Yeah, so like basically they're expanding it, right? So Battlefield has already had a 64 player match, a multiplayer, which is already was the biggest one out of all the FPSs on the market, right? Call of Duty only has like I think up to 32. Halo only has up to 16. So 64 is already a huge amount for Battlefield 4. Now this one is 128, so that's 2 teams of 64 instead of 2 teams of like 32. So that's going to be a lot. The big thing that they seem to show is like, hey, weather effects, which I'm like, when I first saw this trailer, I'm like, I don't see anything new, don't see anything new, don't see anything new. Okay, cool, we put a tornado in there. Guess what? Just Cause did that 2 years ago. Nobody cared. So there's sandstorms, there's tornadoes. What I really wanted to see, it's probably in the game because it was in Battlefield 4, which was you could actually take down an entire skyscraper and have it topple over. They didn't show that in these game trailers, but I wanted to see that type of destruction from the weather effects that happened, and be able to actually. What does look somewhat interesting, and what they kind of showed or what they hinted at was that the weather effects will happen in the game, but it won't just be an instant death. If like you get sucked up by a tornado and you have a wingsuit, you could fly the tornado and like possibly shooting people while you're in it. But the game also showed like the ridiculousness that is Battlefield, right? You're in a fighter jet, you're gonna jump out with a rocket launcher, shoot another jet, and fall into your jet and get back in. People do that in that game, and it's really kind of crazy when they do it. But to see it in a game trailer, it's like, that's just stupid, dude. You have an RPG and a jet to begin with.
Yeah, we'll see though. I kind of felt like they didn't really show enough based on what they discussed, but we'll see. I mean, I think graphically it's never been an issue. Combat wise, I don't think it's an issue, but we'll see.
Yeah, the combat in the Battlefield games have always been fun. Like I really liked Battlefield 1's multiplayer, but I liked the short stories that they had for the single player campaign, even though it wasn't like a full blown long campaign or storyline, which is fine because the storyline in Battlefield 4 is kind of boring and meh. I would like those kind of tiny encapsulated stories that were really cool in Battlefield 1, but if it's all going to be multiplayer, I'm worried about microtransactions, pay to win, that type of stuff that will always seep in there. Because they're going to have to support the private servers, which Battlefield kind of already does because we're letting people rent and buy servers for themselves. But then again, what will eventually happen since it's only multiplayer is they'll have it running for so long, and then it'll eventually just be those private servers, which then getting into one of those is going to be a pain in the ass if you don't know the people because they tend to kick you out. Or if you're not good, they end up banning you from joining them again, that type of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that, but yeah, we'll see. It's still early, and Microsoft, their E3 presentation had a lot of expansion stuff too, you know. And on that note, Microsoft Flight Simulator had a Top Gun expansion, more content for this highly praised title. I'm just not sure what the crossover is beyond having the aircraft and whatnot. I don't know if there's going to be a story thing added. But console,
I doubt it.
Yeah.
It's a simulator. There's no story in the flight simulator. It's just real life satellite imagery of the world that you get to fly through.
It'd be cool if they did more, though. Is what I'm saying. You know, rather than if you're gonna have Top Gun in it, right? You got to have like Top Gun Maverick. You're gonna have him in there. Like, is he gonna talk to us, right? Like, how much are they really pulling, or is it just the aircraft?
It'd be interesting to have the aircraft and like they let you play like the Top Gun school where you did dogfight practice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That I think that would be interesting. And that'd be a cool way to throw some multiplayer into it. But I seriously doubt it, since like the Top Gun expansion is obviously a tie-in for the movie that's supposed to come out, I guess, later this year. But in the grand scheme of the thing, the movie's a fucking joke,
Yeah.
and everybody knows it, because it's like even my friends who really like the original Top Gun, when they saw they're making another one, the first response almost everybody says, and almost anybody who's in the Navy says, is, "How is this guy still in the fucking Navy? He should be kicked out by now because he's too fucking old."
Yeah. Why would they bring him back?
He wouldn't be a ranking officer this long. He would have retired by now.
Yeah, 80s.
But
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting to Flight Simulator. I think it's something that I would like to play, but it's not a game that I would play all the way through, because there's no story to it. It's just, hey, if I want to fly to this location, I can see real satellite, cool, high end 4K imagery of this area. If you're like a super flight enthusiast, you can get like the plane throttle and steering wheel for this, and you can then fly like the LA to Las Vegas flight, and it flies in real time. That's why this isn't a game that's actually for people who want to fly like an arcadey fun game. This is for people who are like, I wish I was a pilot and I can own a plane and I can't afford to be a pilot, so I'll play this. Because you're just a 3-hour flight in this game is a 3-hour flight in the game. It's gonna take you 3 hours to get there, so you have to make your own fun. Basically, is what I'm saying with this type of game.
Hence the simulator.
Yeah. But it is finally hitting consoles on the 27th. My one big concern with this is that it's going to eat up a lot of hard drive space. And one of the problems with the Series X and Series S is that unless you have an expansion drive, you don't have a whole lot of space to play. And even if you put an SSD drive, external drive to it, what I did notice, one of the flaws with the hardware is that any of these games that are optimized for Series X and Series S, much like what Simulator is probably going to be, they will not run unless they run off of the internal or the official expansion drives. I have an SSD tied to one of my consoles, and I noticed, why is this game installing to my internal hard drive? Oh, it got updated, and now it won't play on anything but the internal hard drives that they have. They won't play off of your third-party ones that you plug in.
Interesting. Yeah, and they did show another game I thought was pretty interesting. It was one I'm mildly interested in if they can pull it off, but it was Party Animals, and it looked like a cute version of Kung Fu Chaos, and maybe for those who aren't familiar with that old of a title, it was like Smash Brothers, but with a cute art style. You know, yeah, it was really interesting. The release date is 2022, so I would say it's too early to kind of judge the gameplay, but I did like what it looked like. Seems to be geared towards kids and families. I know you made the note of saying it looks like a cute version of Gang Beasts. Players take control of these cute animals like tigers, dogs, and gorillas, and so on, and they basically have to fight to the death. It was very entertaining to watch, but we'll see what the gameplay develops into.
And the reason why I say it's like Game Beast is because it looks like the mechanics of like how you grab people is kind of complicated, and like they don't move necessarily exactly as finitely as you want, which makes it kind of funny to watch people play. It definitely does hit like, oh, this is cute and this is funny and might be entertaining to play. I can see why you would think like kind of Kung Fu Chaos and whatnot, but I feel like Kung Fu Chaos and Smash Brothers are more finite, where there's combo moves and things you have to hit to do special moves. This is pretty much trying to grab somebody and push them off something without falling off yourself. So it's very much like Gang Beats, but with animal costumes instead of just blobby like stick figure men.
Yeah, I can see that. We'll see though. This one's super early, and another game they showed too didn't look too polished to me, but it might be good for people who like a quick romp. Is The Ascent. Looked like co-op Contra like gameplay with a top-down view. Comes out to the Xbox on July 29th. Futuristic art style, lots of enemies, big guns. It kind of reminded me of the Xbox 360 Expendables 2 game a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. I would say I like the co-op Contra analogy you make, but I also say it's like a cyberpunk Diablo, where there's these set characters you have. They have set powers and upgrades that you can give them, and you go through this cyberpunk world blowing shit up. Don't really know what the story is, but it is that asymmetrical top-down type of view of you and a group of people working together as you go through these levels.
Yeah. And I don't know if you play Sea of Thieves, but they did show Jack Sparrow coming, which I actually think is a brilliant addition that should have been there much sooner, really. But I like the fact that they're bringing Pirates of the Caribbean characters, and I'd say if you play Sea of Thieves, it's definitely worth playing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Sea of Thieves just because it's a game that you need to have people to play with. Just trying to solo the game is very difficult and not very fun, in my opinion. When I saw this though, what I thought my first thought was, all right, so they ran out of ideas. They're just gonna replay Pirates of the Caribbean, which one should have been in the game, like you said, a lot earlier. But this makes you wonder, like, are they on their last leg of creative ideas? Because now they're just taking the popular pirate lore, and rejuvenizing it in here. Because it almost seems like, are we playing through the Pirates of the Caribbean storyline, or are we just adding all these characters and we're doing something new? That is what I don't know about it. But they have not more than just Jack Sparrow. They have Davy Jones. They have his ship. They have his enemies popping up. So it makes you wonder, what exactly are we doing here? Are we playing through the storyline, or are we doing a new adventure with these characters? But yeah, if you're Sea of Thieves, they have their own fan base. That's great. I would rather have seen like Perfect Dark, since they had announced that that's what they were working on. But there was no, that was also missing from this E3 event. We didn't see Perfect Dark or any other rare titles that we thought that they were going to try and be putting out.
Yeah, they kind of stuck to the usual suspects. I mean, another one they announced was Forza Horizon 5, which the only thing I thought was interesting is that they chose Mexico as the location, but that was really, they basically announced that they only chose it because it has snow-capped mountains, it has desert, it has forest, jungles, and all this jazz. But I didn't feel like it was strongly compelling beyond like, here's Forza Horizon 4, but with a different environment, And I like Forza 4, Horizon 4.
And yeah, I like the Horizon series as well because of the wackiness that kind of happens, like the crazy showstopper races that you do when you're racing like giant hovercrafts or jets and trains and stuff. And they set those up and execute them very well, but they didn't showcase that here. Their big thing was on the location, as they usually do with Horizon. But picking Mexico seemed like an odd choice to me, because it's like Mexico's not known for having like lots of driving roads to drive on. But then you think back, well, neither does Scotland. But their big thing there was that they could change the seasons. So them saying, "Oh, we picked Mexico because it has all these different biomes," it's like, but you just came out with a game a few years ago that you can change the biome with weather effects. So why do we need to be in this specific location for that when you can just do that anyway? um, I don't know. To me, it's like, I'm not super interested in the location where it's at. It doesn't pique my interest. I'd be more interested in seeing, like, all right, what type of showstopper events do they have for the festival in this version of the game, and are they going to be as exciting and as unique and cool as they were in the other ones? Because I really do like even the Halo mission that they threw in Horizon 4 was really cool, and like interesting how they threw that element in there. Whereas, since they're not using that to showcase the game, I have no idea if it's gonna have like the fun things that I like about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it develops into. I think there's some aspects of Mexico that would be interesting, like the temples. You could show the Aztec temples, right, which is more near Mexico City. You could show the Mayan temples. Um, you have Baja, right? You don't have to just go with like the main part of Mexico. You can go with Baja California. I think there's a lot of options there, but like they didn't show too much, so I'd have to see more.
Yeah, and then what they emphasize is like, "Oh, look, here's some real life graffiti art that we had like this artist make for us." I'm like, I'm not gonna drive in Forza Horizon to stop in the middle of a town to admire the art, dude. And they talked a lot more like, "Hey, look, we're using photorealistic graphics for these rock formations and this and that." I'm like, that's great, but what are the roads like, dude? Is this all gonna be off roading? I mean, I honestly don't know. Does Mexico have a lot of like well paved roads to be driving across?
Not necessarily, no, but I know the
It's
cartels paved some.
So that's the thing. Like you said, like it'd be interesting to see Mexican temples, right? Well, if there's no real roads that go around it, are we just now just kind of being a complete arcade game where we're just making stuff up? Where like the last one in Scotland, there were roads that are really real streets and roads that you can drive in Scotland to go through these areas. Because that's one of the things that I did, and that was like, oh, cool. Here's Arthur's Seat. Here's the road that goes right up to Edinburgh Castle. They do it's not a realistic 100% recreation of the city, but they had some of that stuff in there, where I feel like So where we drive around in Mexico, is it all dirt roads? Is it paved roads? What things are you showing? Because they didn't show Mexico City. They didn't show a big metropolitan area. They showed a little tiny town
Yeah,
and rocks basically. So
I'm also not sure how you'd get from like, let's say you're gonna go to like Rosarito, right, or Cabo, or even like the other towns that are on the Baja California. When you go past it, like, how are you gonna go from, let's say they do have Mexico City. How are you gonna go from Mexico City to Baja California? Are you gonna have to drive all the way around? How are you gonna travel from A to B in that case? So it's not so time consuming. That's the part I was actually more worried about because
and
Scotland is
that's the thing.
smaller.
That's the thing is like the one in Australia, which is Horse of Horizon 3, was a small section around Sydney and whatnot. Horizon 4 is Scotland, but it's a small section of Scotland. So they got to center this around something and not just a desert. So where is there a spot in Mexico where you have mountains, jungles, deserts, and all these biomes that are easily reachable that aren't gonna like have to like do okay, well we beat this section, now we're moving the festival all the way over to this other side, and you can't really go back to the one you were in before or something. Which that's not usually what Horizon does. If it moves things around, it still lets you drive to those old areas again, but it takes forever to get there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. A lot of these games at the Xbox Bethesda showcase did kind of seem limited in terms of what they showed. Like even this next one on this list, right? Psychonauts 2, right? We've played Psychonauts 1. I think it's a fun game. Some parts of it are a little difficult. The learning curve can be like hit and miss here and there. Tim Schafer is brilliant. Double Fine Studios is a great studio. But once again, just like Forza Horizon, they didn't really show too much to give us a good idea other than here's some cool stuff to look at. More to be shown later, I guess. But what's weird is Psychonauts 2 releases August 25th.
And that's the thing is with Psychonauts 2, like you said, you played it. I was not a big fan of the original art style, but that's because the way the art style works with the graphics back then, it's kind of blurry and kind of meh and muddy. Seeing it now in the newer consoles is much more crisper. It looks nicer. It looks better. I know Jack Black plays a role in this game that he featured in some of his videos and whatnot, which looks very interesting. Gave me the feel like there might be a play on different music genres of like here's like trippy 60s hippie music versus rock music, that type of stuff. I don't know if that's gonna be an element that plays in it too, but that's what I got from Jack Black's video is that it seemed like there's definitely gonna be a musical element in it. It definitely looks good. I think people who like Psychonauts 1 will like Psychonauts 2. If you haven't played the first one, and if you're like me, like the first one doesn't look very good to me as far as aesthetically pleasing. This looks better because that art style is crisper and moves smoother in new
Mm-hmm.
and better gen hardware. So I'll probably try it out just to see what it's like.
Yeah, the control definitely looked a lot better. Like you said, smoother. Definitely smoother. It looked like they'd made a lot of upgrades to the combat and game design. So we'll see more. I'm curious to see how this one shapes up, or maybe we'll just all find out when it releases. Who knows? Now, going in the last four here of this list, this next one kind of came at me. I had heard about it coming out. A bit of an older franchise, but Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. And this game looks like it could be from the Metro series when you look at it from the visual standpoint. But the gameplay was especially interesting and unique. It looks gritty. And if you were in enough danger from other people and things in your environment, you have these invisible anomalies which can kill you. And you visit Pripyat, which everyone knows is the site of the Chernobyl disaster. So I find a lot of what they present in terms of ideas interesting. They just didn't show a lot as well.
That's the thing is that the original Stalker game, I remember people raving about that when that came out. But that was more like it was like a true like stealth or sneaking around type game because you had to be very careful where you go with the radiation. You had to be careful about being detected, that type of stuff. This seems a little bit more action based. But the fact that the whole thing was in Russian and it did tell you a lot of the story, what was going on, I was like, I don't care. I really just don't care about this. You're not making it compelling at all for me to care. I don't know who any of these characters are, why I should care about anything that's going on. Why is anybody even in Chernobyl to begin with? Who cares? So it's not one that's it's definitely not on my list of games to play, but I think fans of the series are probably interested in it.
Yeah. And one of the other games they showed that really caught my attention, and I might even go as far as say, as out of all of E3, this was probably my favorite, was Ayuden Chronicle Rising and Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. This game looks like the proper evolution of what a 2D Final Fantasy RPG was, going from Super Nintendo to modern consoles, right? You have pixel drawn characters, immaculately well designed 3D backgrounds that are very detailed. You have the standard JRPG elements and a campy narrative. It was very compelling. And what was interesting is Twitter itself, because I'm on Twitter quite a bit. A lot of people were talking about how, why don't more games look like this? And I kind of agree. I think the visual aesthetic was very well designed. Um, it did look like a turn based RPG, but I wasn't 100% sure looking at it if it was going to be 100% that way, but it looked good.
Yeah, I got those vibes. I also got like the vibes of like what is that game called? God damn it, I had it on the tip of my tongue. Octopath Traveler. It like reminded me how cool Octopath looked like to me. But one of the things that came to my mind is like, cool, let's make this a real good game where all the characters, whether you have a good story, the characters interact with each other. Like Octopath Traveler is a really good JRPG, but my one big gripe with it, and the one reason why I didn't finish it, is that you spend your time picking up like 7 to 8 different people to join your party. None of the characters interact with each other. Like they're like everybody has their own story that they're following, but they're never talking to each other about what's happening. Nobody's ever giving their input on somebody else's problem. It's just, yeah, these 8 people are with me, and I swap them out to fight with, and they all have their own story that they're telling, but nobody seems to be connected to each other, which to me is like that's a failure in storytelling. So if I can get a really good Final Fantasy, like classic Final Fantasy turn-based RPG game with a good story and really crisp graphics like this, I'm down for that. I understand some people are like, hey, this looks like that PS2 game looks really great on the new hardware. Like, yeah, obviously it's not next gen quality graphics, but it's taking the old school stuff and making it run even smoother and better on newer hardware, which I can be down for as long as you have a good story to tell. If you have no story to tell and you're just showcasing a graphical art style, it gets boring really quick. So we'll have to see what they do with this.
Yeah, from a graphical standpoint, definitely pleasing. I think you hit it on the head by saying it's just kind of taking everything and making it better. More to see, I guess, with the narrative, but what they did show in terms of the character interactions did look really strong to me. Um, Kind of on that same note of this 2D visual appearance, right? Replaced looked like a dystopian version of the recently released Cloudpunk, which had some also Castlevania type of gameplay vibes in it, and visually stunning mix again of 3D environments and pixel art characters. I think it looks interesting, but I would have to see more. The platforming to me looked a little rough visually, but that I know I'm being a little anal retentive when it comes to that aspect because we've had so many good platformers and Cloudpunk. I enjoyed Cloudpunk, but it didn't. The gameplay didn't strike me as good as I had hoped, but I did enjoy playing it. This game kind of looks like in the same vein, but with more of a Metroidvania exploration.
Yeah, I was very interested in Cloudpunk, but I ran into a lot of bugs in it, so I stopped playing it. So I don't know if they ever fixed the bugs that came out with Cloudpunk. Again, this looks interesting, but again, like everything else, I need to see more. We didn't see enough to make it an informed decision yet.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the heavy hitter of the Xbox show, which is Halo Infinite, looking a lot better.
Yeah, the first thing I noticed is like, hey, look, they use real rock geometric shapes instead of the Minecraft blocky look that they had there. Like, there's still a little bit of that in there, but now I remember seeing you're on a mountainscape. Like, it actually looks like a real mountainscape and not these weird blocks like layered everywhere. So they definitely took the feedback that they heard where people were like, this looks stupid and looks like shit, and they improved that. And I think that definitely looked good. I would say their big announcement was that multiplayer was going to be free for everybody. It's just going to be, hey, here's Halo Infinite multiplayer. No microtransactions. Everything you get, you earn through the game. But it's going to be a heavy thing on building your own Spartan and unlocking new cosmetics, kind of like how Master Chief Collection is now. I just hope that they make the guns feel right and feel good because, like, I played a lot of Master Chief Collection, and then I tried playing some Halo 5 yesterday, and I was like, wow, these guns feel weak. I can see why everybody plays Master Chief Collection because they feel so much better and they have better sound effects. So hopefully they do that. And then they showed a little bit of the Halo Infinite story, which I still have no idea if like does Halo 5 exist in this universe, or do they just throw it out the door? They literally did like the weird thing of what you expect a middle-aged white man to do. They traded in Cortana for a younger version of her. They literally say, "Oh yeah, Cortana got decommissioned. Somebody picked her up to destroy her. I'm your new Cortana." It's like same voice actor, but you gave us a younger, more vibrant version of Cortana instead of the moody bitch that she turned into.
Yeah, we traded in the naked looking AI for the thick girl in a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got. But I mean,
But I think I think the character design looks better.
yeah,
But I'm like, obviously, like again, my biggest gripe with Halo is like they don't know what story to tell. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Get rid of Master Chief, get rid of Cortana, and tell a new story in the Halo universe. Why the hell are we still with these characters? And all they did was like people don't seem to like the old Cortana and how she's about to take over the universe, right? Let's not even reference that, and hey, here's a new Cortana. She's young, she's different, she's not like that other one. It's like
does he even need
I'm
an
just
AI?
exhausted.
Does he even need one? I mean, really? Because he didn't start out with
No,
one.
I know he doesn't. It's like it's just like drop that already. So we gotta see more of where that goes because again, no idea if this is starting a new storyline and they're just forgetting about Halo 5 completely, or if they're doing something completely different. Obviously, they've made it clear that we killed we're going to get rid of the old Cortana, and here's a new one for you, which seemed very odd. The multiplayer I'm more excited about. I'm like, cool. If it is anything like Master Chief Collection, but with the new gear that they've added and the new balances, that looks really cool because they've had like a bubble shield, but the bubble shield can have sections that get taken down. They have kind of like a armor lock shield that you can pull up and you can bounce energy back at people. So people trying a new combo, you can now shoot that shit back at them and kill them. The weapons sounded and looked right. The grapple hook, my only kind of gripe on that is that Titanfall did the grapple hook. I think Titanfall might have done it better because the Titanfall grapple hook is faster. This looked really, really slow. But it was also cool that you could grapple hook weapons and pick weapons up, and that there's some weapons that can actually do a ton of damage to vehicles now, so you actually have fighting chances. They don't give you armor lock anymore. I think like he shot a harpoon gun at a warthog and completely knocked it over. You can shoot the wheels off of the cars now, so like they'll run just on rims and they'll have a hard time driving, and then there'll be basically a bailout point where the vehicle will be on fire and you have to decide, do I bail or do I stay on here before and try and kill things before it blows up. So it sounds like the multiplayer, they've added a lot of cool things with it and made it look really crisp. It moves really crisp, and they've given you a lot of customization stuff that you can do with it, including this new concept of you having your own personalized AI that you'll probably basically unlock through gameplay and probably earning in-game credits or something that will be personalized to whatever you pick and that stuff. I think it's probably more so along the lines of picking like the Cortana voiceover or the Buck voiceover or the basic voiceover for the game. We'll have to see what they do with that. But bigger emphasis on creating your own Spartan, new armor abilities, new weapons, and new gameplay opportunities. So this was one of the few games that it looked like a next-gen game, and they were bringing new things to the franchise rather than rehashing old stuff.
Yeah, when you mentioned the lasso, that's actually a perfect thing about leveling the playing field between you on foot against a vehicle. For example, you could lasso a Banshee and then knock that guy out of the Banshee and then take over. So if you're sitting there getting bombed from the air, you're not just at the mercy of it. You can actually find a way to even the playing field by using that lasso. And I think that was a good idea of balancing the gameplay, something I think Halo's needed for a while in multiplayer. So we'll see.
Yep.
Now, that was that was essentially day 2. Sorry, yeah, day 2, and day 3 didn't really have much per se to show. I'm just gonna harp on these 4 quick games from the indie showcase. They did show more than this, but I honestly feel like a lot of indie games aren't very compelling, and I wanted to focus on the ones that really did look presentable. And Bark was basically a cute little shoot 'em up with cartoony graphics. Nothing exceptional, just kind of a game for the shoot 'em up fans. Larcenauts is a Team Fortress 2 style game, blends modern multiplayer on the online battle arena elements into it, which I'm not sure if it's going to be better than Team Fortress 2, but it was in that same vein. Toy Soldiers, This game comes out in August. Looks like it would fit in with any of the Army Men series titles from the early 2000s. I'm sure you remember Army Men, Sarge's
Yep.
Heroes, good games. Now, the game that I felt like was the strong hitter though of the whole indie showcase was Fallen Aces. Surprisingly compelling looking game here. Cell shaded graphics telling a crime noir story. And the most interesting part about it is the engine looks like it's straight out of Wolfenstein 3D or the original Doom engine from the 90s. Maybe even Duke Nukem 3D for those who remember that as well. It looked really good, and I liked the fact that it actually had a bit of a story intertwined with it. So it wasn't just like this very basic 3D game, but it was cool that you're punching guys in the face and he's like actually taking the hits to his face and wincing with this 2D cell shaded look when he does it as your fist kind of comes out the bottom of the screen. Really retro looking, but like a good, kind of like a Eiyuden Chronicles, right? It's like taking old concepts and reinventing them. And I thought it was really interesting to see that in the indie showcase specifically.
Yeah, that definitely sounds more interesting than the other titles. So it'd be something interesting to check out. I didn't get a chance to see a lot of this because I was working when they're doing most of this stuff. But Fallen Aces does sound something interesting. Where other stuff just kind of says like they're kind of rehashing stuff and just making almost shovelware for like, hey, if you like this, you'll probably like that,
Yeah.
and play this. Now, when we got to day 4, is basically the Nintendo Direct, is usually what Nintendo does. There was kind of a lot of hype around this because people were expecting them to announce their new hardware, which is like a new Switch HD or Switch something that has, or Switch Pro, I think was what it was called, where it doesn't have the Joy-Cons detached. It's basically a full handheld, I think is what some of the rumors are. Because that's the business that they own, right? They own the handheld world. The Switch, I think, was a great idea to combine the two and very innovative. That's why one reason why everybody has it, right? One reason why everybody bought the Wii was because it was innovative and new. But they didn't really show a lot of stuff that anybody really cared about. Like Super Monkey Ball is basically every Monkey Ball game ever made. So if you're a Monkey Ball fan, great. Monkey Ball is basically Marble Madness, but with a monkey in it. Advance Wars 1 and 2 remastered Game Boy Advance games, 3D graphics. WarioWare, which is literally shovelware, but given with a Wario twist. I mean, a lot of people liked it, but it literally is just mini games the entire time. Mario Golf Super Rush. If you're a Mario Golf fan, maybe I guess this game's for you. Weird thing is, I find is the Shin Megami Tensei 5, because Shin Megami Tensei is basically what Persona games are, or Persona games came out of that franchise, and this is kind of the same, but this is more done on I think a turn base. Well, they're both turn based, but like they're almost the same thing. But I guess the Shin Megami Tensei is definitely a different art style than what the Persona games went for. Persona games, like Catherine, they went a more anime style. This is a little bit of that, but not as much. And it's more focused on, I think, strategy of placement where people are at, and how the fighting works is different than it does in Persona. But it's kind of weird because that's the series that Persona basically came out of. The one game that I actually was kind of excited about was definitely the Fatal Frame game. I was surprised to see it. I didn't think anybody cared about Fatal Frame again. I was like, cool, a Fatal Frame game, awesome. I would play that.
It's just a re-release of the Wii U game, but the problem is who owned a Wii U. It's like not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a re-release. I thought it was a brand new game.
No, it was on the Wii U, but I really don't. I mean, I like Fatal Frame too, but the problem is they kind of went just to Nintendo platforms, so like it kind of disappeared for a moment, right? I think there was another
Yeah.
game that was exclusive on the Wii itself. Then we had this Wii U release, and pretty much every game that had some sort of fan following or decent reception on the Wii U, Nintendo's slowly bringing over to Switch, right? Except I think it's Tecmo, I believe, that owns the rights to Fatal Frame. Yeah, it looks really interesting. I'm curious to see. The graphics do look slightly better, or at least it runs slightly better than the Wii U version from what I've seen. I don't have a Wii U because
I didn't even know about this game that it was on the Wii U, but the graphics looked better. Definitely still looked like it was in an art stylish way of what some of the old games were. They use a lot of the film grain to keep it creepy and whatnot, but it looked like cool. This feels like Fatal Frame 2, which was a generally like creepy and cool game to play.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be interesting. I'd be curious to see how it plays on the Switch. I need to get a Switch still, but just haven't even time to game much these days.
Hmm.
I don't know if you saw Dear Villagers though, but it was kind of, I don't remember Muramusa kind of talking about the Wii. That was a pretty good Wii game, where you kind of have like characters that kind of move like Dragon's Crown sort of art style.
Okay.
It looked pretty good. I'm not sure because they didn't really show story too much. I'm more of a story guy, so we'll have to see. But I did think from a gameplay and art style standpoint, it looked pretty good. You mentioned Breath of the Wild too. I mean, I'm not a big Zelda guy, and I personally lean more towards the previous titles to Breath of the Wild. But
Yeah, I mean, I have Breath of the Wild. I've actually not finished it yet. It is a very beautiful and kind of cool looking game. I feel like Breath of the Wild really lacks though is the music department where it has like cool elements where you're in some areas and you'll faintly hear the music of Zelda, but it's so faint you can't really pick it up almost sometimes. Where I feel like they needed to add more of that to it. But Breath of the Wild 2 looks like it's kind of a mix of like Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild, right? It's still the same universe of Breath of the Wild, but apparently there's floating islands now or something, and there's a lot of falling and jumping and transporting yourselves through rock to these other islands or something. One of the biggest things I saw on YouTube was one of the Pro ZD did a video where it's like, "Oh, Breath of the Wild 2, you want to play as Zelda? Fuck you, you're not. You're playing as Link again."
yeah, I mean, I'm not like I think the problem with the newer Zeldas is they look much longer. I really liked, the
They
shorter
are
time
very
frames.
long.
Yeah, like Legend Ocarina of Time is nowhere near as long as Breath of the Wild is. Maybe I just suck at games. I don't know, but it's just not my cup of tea. But you're right. The visual art style and design is very amazing. The puzzles too, very amazing.
Yeah, it's the only thing is that I think Breath of the Wild is so good that people have started copying it to the point like almost like basically PUBG copying it. Um, Phoenix Immortals Rising Phoenix is a complete ripoff of Breath of the Wild, except it's just placed in ancient Greece, and then they've done I think an ancient Chinese skin for that game too. Um, and that to me is like Breath of the Wild. Its gameplay is based off of the original gameplay of the original Legend of Zelda, with like a lot of the things that make that game take a long time is that like you can't get the Master Sword until you have a certain number of hearts. Well, getting hearts is very complicated, hard and kind of hard to do because you have to find all the shrines to do it. But those are things that slowed you down in the original Legend of Zelda, where Breath of the Wild does it in a much more almost the same way of just you have to explore and find shit on your own. There's nobody leading you by the nose of where to go.
Yeah.
Wild 2 looks interesting with having the floating island concept to it. But I'm not super interested as in because I got kind of bored with Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild just takes forever to play through. This feels like here's another game that's going to be just as good, just as great to look at, and have just as much content, but it's still going to take you a while to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, more. It's definitely felt more of the same with some upgrades, which kind of was like Metroid Dread. They showed that too, right? It's a kind of return for Metroid's 2D form, and you kind of get that SNES style Super Metroid gameplay, but with improved graphics. The only thing that I thought was funny is a lot of people on Twitter complained about how like this is as good as it looks, and you're charging me $60.
The other thing is that like it's the Metroid that nobody wanted. Everybody wants the next Metroid Prime. Like I've only played Metroid Prime 1 and I loved that game. I thought that game was amazing when it came out. I would love to see more first person Metroid Prime games and like the Metroid Prime 4, they announced that years ago and they're still teasing it. Even this year they came and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
we don't have Metroid Prime 4. We're still working on it, but here's Metroid Dread." And it's like, well, I don't care. People who love the 2D Metroid and love Metroidvania type games in 2D will probably like this game. People like me who are wanting the next Prime first person Metroid game, I'm waiting for that, and I'm still waiting. The other thing that they announced was another Smash Brothers character, where I feel like Smash Brothers is getting to the point where, like, I don't care what characters you're adding, like, and you're adding a Tekken character, who gives a shit? It's basically was an inside joke for everybody. Like, if you're a Tekken fan, they recreated a scene in Tekken where the character that they added to, which I don't even know his name, like throws his
Kazuya.
father off a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they redid that same scene with him throwing all the Smash Brother characters off a cliff to announce that he's going to be in the game. To me, Smash Brothers is a really good game. It's really fun to play, and it's fun to play against other people. But they're running out of stuff than just adding characters at this point. Like, all right, you need to come up with something new for this franchise, or stop adding stuff because I don't really care about paying for these characters. I don't even think past the Piranha Plant, I don't have any other new characters in the game because I don't play it enough to care.
Yeah, I haven't even played it since GameCube, so
Yeah. Monster Hunter 2, Wings of Ruin. If you're a Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter fan, this game is for you. I played Monster Hunter World. That game's pretty fun, but I'm not interested. I'm not too into the whole Monster World franchise. But if you are, this is probably right up your alley. And then Mario Party Superstars. Again, it's another franchise that it has its fan base. If you like Mario Party, which is a crazy ass long Monopoly game basically that you play with your friends on a console, then you're gonna like this. Like, Mario Party is great to play with a bunch of people in the same room with, but outside of that event, it's meh to me, I guess. So it's like, right now I'm not having a lot of people over at my house and having parties, so we're not playing Mario Party.
yeah, that's true. Online capability would add to it. I like Mario Party, but for me, the load times was always an issue once they got off of the 64. But that was just a personal nitpick for me. Yeah. Aside from that, I just never got into
the
it.
Nintendo Online system doesn't work very well. It's not as easy to matchmake as it is on Xbox or PlayStation. So it's like, that's why, like, with Smash Brothers, I kind of don't care, because unless somebody's in my house with me playing against me, there's nobody to play with.
Yeah.
So it kind of kills that. I mean, it's great that there's a whole system out there that has a lot of games designed for couch co-op, but unless people in your household really like that game and like to play it, then man. And Courtney likes Smash Brothers, but she's not going to say, "Hey, let's play Smash Brothers tonight." So, like, he just sits there and collects dust.
Yeah, and honestly, that pretty much sums up what I got from people online. Everybody said Nintendo had the strongest showing, and I'm not necessarily sure I agree with it. But I think the problem too is generally this E3 was pretty weak, so I would say it's a toss up between Xbox, Bethesda, and Nintendo. You could go with either one, really.
I think the people who says Nintendo has the best showing are the Nintendo fanboys who think Nintendo's great about everything, because Nintendo Directs are for those people. Xbox fans think Xbox is great, where I think Xbox had actually pretty poor showing, except for a few titles here and there. The next title, like, which was from the Square Enix conference, Guardians of the Galaxy, that's literally the only other game that I saw here that looked like next gen graphics. Like, Elden Ring was announced and shown before E3, but they kind of showed a little bit more of that. But Elden Ring looks like more Dark Souls to me. It has definitely that Dark Souls aesthetic, which can be very cool, but Dark Souls aesthetic doesn't look very next gen to me. It looks very stylized. Halo Infinite and Guardians of the Galaxy looked next gen with how the character models were designed, how they moved, how the animation and lighting worked. It looked like it was utilizing what was being put into these new consoles, which I'm more interested in playing this, because here's a game that looks next gen versus necessarily the content in it. A lot of people are upset that you have a Guardians game and you can only play as one character. I'm like, well, they're going to tell the story through Star-Lord's eyes. Fine, you play a Star-Lord. It's a single-player game. I'm kind of okay with that. I don't need a multiplayer game, and nor do I need a game that I need to play through 5 different times so I can play through as each different character of the Guardians to get their perspective. That's kind of just elongating and bloating your game. This does look interesting. I want to see more of it, but like I said, it's this and Halo Infinite multiplayer were the prettiest games to look at, I feel like, throughout this whole thing. That wasn't a stylized, smooth running game. It's great that you have all these 2Ds, retro looking, cool art style games coming out, but they're in those art styles because they can run smoother and faster on newer hardware. I want to see the hardware push it to where I get games like how Mass Effect was when that came out. I was like, holy shit, this looks really good. Like, I want to see the next level of realism in gaming, and not just, hey, cool, this 2D game moves smooth now.
Yeah, that bleeding edge technology advancements that really impress you in a way that few things do in all of, like, like we were talking offline before this. It's like when we went from like Super Mario Brothers 3 to like Super Mario World, we were like, oh my god, this looks amazing. And then you kind of went to the next platform, and then PlayStation came, right? And I was like, oh my god, this looks even better, right? Because now you could do things you couldn't do before. And you had these revolutionary things as opposed to evolutionary things. Like nowadays, most games tend to be evolutionary, and I mean, Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5 are out. I feel like we haven't yet to see one game that really pushes the envelope that people just go, holy crap, this is something that is amazing and may even be difficult to do on a PC that's high end, right? They basically are high end PCs, but we're not really seeing anything that takes advantage of that hardware to 100% or near that.
Yeah, and like the things that I have seen that I've called out, like, hey, look, Mass Effect Legendary Edition on the Series X actually has a notable difference in the Series S, because of how it plays, how it does shadow work, right? Like, it does it, but it does it in key scenes where you'll see it, and you don't see it all the time. So you'll notice it when they're missing that animation or they're missing those textures, because they didn't have time to go in and do it in every sequel scene, right? I want to see a next gen game that has that not uncanny valley animation, but where things move where they feel realistic, they're moving smoothly. Shadow and light is playing off of stuff like it realistically should, because that makes me go, wow, this looks amazing for some reason. Why? It's the lighting or it's the animation is done smooth. With Guardians of the Galaxy, from some of the behind the scenes stuff that they showed, they didn't just motion capture the main character. They have the whole team of people for the Guardians are all motion captured characters, and they all act out every sequence together, much like they did with the Uncharted franchise. So the movements and the animation look smoother and they run better and looks crisper than you would if you just motion captured faces and then you animated bodies, because you don't get the same animation or nuance and movement. So I think those are like the best of what came out of E3 this year. Again, E3 is dying. It's going to just turn into just in June, people are going to have events. And either they'll all have them in the same week or they'll just all drop them. Nope. But yeah, those are, I think Guardians of the Galaxy and Halo Infinite Multiplayer are the best looking games that were announced. E3 is basically kind of a dying beast. We're not going to see the big expo that we had in the past, maybe. Or maybe there could be a rejuvenation of that, since people have been cooped up and they all want to go out someplace. But E3 originally was just for the press, right? If they bring E3 back and they want to make it successful, I think it needs to be like a Comic-Con. Like, everybody's invited, everybody can go, you just buy a ticket, and then we'll see these companies maybe come back to that. But it's cheaper for them to just do a broadcast like they did this year. I just hope next year we get more and more like, hey, these games are coming out now, and then we actually change the formula to, instead of getting these kind of crappy teasers that just give us a concept and don't actually show us gameplay, that they start giving us trailers like movie trailers. Like, in general, most movie trailers use footage from the movie that you're going to go see. So give me game trailers that uses footage from the actual game so I can see what gameplay is like. Give me elements of story. Let me know why I should play this game. Not, hey, here's some cool, wacky looking characters and they're fighting vampires. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Like, well, why? What happened? What's going on?
Yeah, just show me the gameplay. I mean, no, I normally see like in past E3s, you'd see like the guy come out and play the game live in the demo. I didn't see that once this E3, not once. It was interesting.
Yeah, and because they got caught for lying last time they did that shit. Remember?
That's true, but some people did it for real. That's what I like seeing it. It was very interesting, and we did leave out some aspects too about this E3. Like, we didn't discuss Razer, we didn't discuss Mythical Games much, which had the Blancos game, right, and Take-Two showcase as well. I think you put it best, right? Razer seems to think E3 was a CES event. We got a laptop,
yeah,
we got a USB charger, overpriced LED mask.
Yeah, like, when I heard what Razer is showing, I'm like, do they realize it's June and not March? Like, what the fuck? Like, hey, Razer, this isn't CES. Nobody cares about your laptop to come out. Nobody cares about a USB charger brick that's super small. And nobody, in the time when mask mandates are going away, wants to buy an LED mask. Like, this, and one, I'm not going to spend, I have no idea what the price point at, but I've seen versions of this that, like, the guy from Black Eyed Peas has designed. He's like, oh, it's a $200 mask. Nobody's gonna pay $200 for a face mask, dude. Fuck
Yeah.
off. You're
At a
stupid.
gaming event, why would you advertise this? But and then we have
Yeah.
mythical games. Going back to the Blancos vinyl toy thing, right? One of the new angles you mentioned is this whole NFT thing. And for people who are not familiar with NFTs or non-fungible tokens, these are items that you basically purchase through cryptocurrencies. That's what NFTs are, right? You're basically making your purchases through the cryptocurrency. So you take your dollars, you convert them to cryptocurrency, you purchase the in-game items through the cryptocurrency, which these things are basically sold as NFTs. I'm just not sure if that's a sales approach that's going to take off. I know you mentioned kids. This is clearly a game that's free to play, advertised towards kids. Are kids going to be sitting here converting dollars into cryptocurrencies? And what are the legalities of all that, too, right? Like, because now we're talking about people literally converting money into these other currencies, if you will, right? It's different from me going to Disneyland and getting Disney bucks, right? We're not talking about the same scenario now because kids can buy a multitude of things
Yeah.
with NFT money or cryptocurrency money.
And that's the thing is that like with we're talking about cryptocurrency, right? Adults have a hard time trying to understand what the fuck cryptocurrencies are. You're gonna throw this at children now, and thinking that, oh well, children will just understand it better. Like children don't understand money, period. To the point that that's why they rack up thousands of dollars on their parents' credit cards in these games. You're now gonna give them access to a cryptocurrency, which if it took off, would it end up being like Bitcoin being worth millions or thousands of dollars or whatnot? Possibly. If that happened, are you gonna let kids just fucking throw that money around? That's weird. It seems it seems like an odd thing to do. And again, it seems like a game where it's like, who wants this? Who asked for this?
Yeah.
Nobody. Why are you making it?
It's really weird.
And then I guess the worst showing of the show was obviously Take Two, because it, like I said before, it was hyped up to people thinking, are we gonna see next gen upgrades for Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead 1? Are we gonna see GTA 6, which everybody wants to see? Which honestly, I don't think they're gonna make a GTA 6 until people stop playing GTA 5 online. If they make another game, it's gonna be an updated online game and not another single player game. We might not ever see another GTA single player game. But instead, they showcased a Zoom call, which was like an hour and a half long on the YouTube video thing, a half hour of it being the placeholder for starting soon. And then you have basically an hour long Zoom call of them talking about diversity, not showing any games, not talking about anything. And it's like, why are you here? Nobody wants to see a bunch of corporate execs talk about how they want to have diversity and all that. It's like, that's a good message, but showing we're at a game convention here, dude. We want to see, and everybody's here to see what new games you're coming out with. So how are you adding this diversity stuff to your games? Show us in game. Show us a game that you're doing this on. Are you or putting more homosexual characters as NPCs in games? Okay, what game are you doing that on? Oh, you don't have a game to talk about that. So like, actions speak louder than words. Don't waste my time with this shit. You have a ton of titles at your disposal that you could be making games for, or even coming up with a new IP, and you spent your time having a Zoom call. That's horrible.
Yeah, cultural sales pitch without any teeth is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen at E3. And I might even go as far as say this is the worst, because normally everything I thought before was crap at E3 was just a bad game. But this wasn't even a game. I felt like it was like, hey, community, public, why don't you sit in on this work meeting from Take-Two and be bored to death? And it was so bad. I skipped through it hoping to see something. There was nothing. And I think that speaks to just E3 overall, that I really thought it was a lackluster showing. There really wasn't much gamers had to see in terms of new gameplay styles or unique narratives. But that's just kind of my takeaway of overall this E3. I want to say it was probably one of the weakest one in decades even.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to make E3 a good thing again, we need to have somebody come out there and say, hey, here's this cool game. Here's the gameplay. Here's this. Guess what? It'll be out next week, or it'll be out tomorrow. Like, don't show us stuff that's going to take 6 years to make, or 6 years out, because we're gonna forget about it, and we're gonna hype it up like Cyberpunk, and it's not gonna live up to what you want it to be, or you'll be pressured to get it out on time. Show us the stuff that's done. Show us the stuff that you're about to come out with this year. Like, don't show me. I like 2022. Okay, that's a year and a half away for a fall 2022 release, but I don't want to see a 2026, 2027, 2025. No, I want to see games that are coming out this fall or the next few months that I can go out and buy soon. And it's even better when you can sit there and say, this game will be out next week. You can buy it. It's done. Instead of like saying, hey, look at all the ideas we have, because you end up, like you said before, you end up getting that Molyneux effect where it's like, well, you're telling me about everything your game can do, but you're not showing it, so it means you haven't done it. And you're using spin words and catchphrases like cloud computing, which means you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. We've already seen the fallout of that stuff in the past, like Crackdown 3 and all those other games that came out that were completely lackluster, that didn't deliver on any of their promises. And you're like, well, this is shit. And then we have to release it for free so that nobody complains to us about it. And it's just forgotten.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we'll see a return to form with like 2019, like you said, and we'll see people attending, playing games. I think that's a much better idea. I think if they're going to stick with this digital release format, they should probably have not necessarily like a portal on each console that or platform, but maybe just have more demos released so players can kind of get a feel of what these games are, because it's Electronic Entertainment Expo E3. We're here to have interactive entertainment, get an idea of it. I don't really give a shit about a Borderlands movie. Like, you didn't even show me anything about the movie. You just talked about it, and it was all hype, hype, hype. Like, at some point, you got to deliver. This was more hype than delivery in terms of an event, in any degree, really.
Yeah, I mean, people got to see Breath of the Wild 2 finally, right? But it's a teaser trailer. They didn't get to actually see what's going on, how that progresses the story. They didn't get to see the things that they wanted to see. We got to get, hey, this will hold you over. The things that they thought would hold us over. Here, Metroid Dread will hold you over for all the Metroid Prime people who want a Metroid Prime game. It's like, no, I want a Metroid Prime game. So what I got from this showing was that there's one or two games I want to buy in the next year.
Yeah.
And those are games like Infinite is going to be coming out this year, and Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out in August or October. So, I mean, those are two games I can buy this year. Everything else, I really don't care about because it's not going to be out for another 2-3 years.
Eiyuden Chronicles looks pretty
cares?
good. I think one comes out this year, and then, or maybe it was, I want to say one came out this year and then one comes out next year. I can't remember the release dates on it, but that game actually was the most compelling to me. Replace looked pretty good. Stalker 2 looked pretty good. I know it's in Russian, but it just looked like I like seeing these different narratives. That's really what I like about E3 is I want to see things that push the envelope, give me some sort of experience I wouldn't have had any other way. And yeah, I mean, for the few titles that did really well with this, I can't praise them enough because, like you phrased it earlier, we're in a drought of new games right now in terms of things taking on new ideas and doing new things. Everyone's kind of in sequelitis. It's a sequel or a remake or a remaster or something. It's not really something that's trying to change the recipe up, right? And that's for the games that really try to do something new, like Eiyuden Chronicles. I can't praise them enough for that alone, because that's why I'll watch E3 again. If I didn't have those games, I wouldn't watch them again. And I think part of the problem too is developers need to stop showing the same game every E3, like Halo Infinite. We're seeing this 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and that's why I think they need to cut them off to like show games that are coming out within the next six to 10 months. Yeah. That way you don't end up repeating yourself over and over again, still talking about the same games. You don't announce a game last year like Fable and then not show it here, or Perfect Dark and not show it the next year, or any of these other stuff. Like, stop showing us things that you've fine, great, you greenlit a Fable game, but you have no idea what it's going to be or how it's designed. Don't show us anything until you got past that part.
Metro Prime 4.
You're already developing it.
Like you said, Metro Prime.
Stop. That's why the Outer Worlds trailer is so funny, because it's exactly calling that out. Like, hey, all we greenlit is that we're gonna make a sequel. So here's a elongated trailer of bullshit to let you know that we're making a sequel.
Yeah, I can get behind that. That's a very clever way to do it. But
and that's what made that enjoyable, right? Because they knew, hey, all we have is a title. We don't have anything else, and they flat out told us that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. Like I said, some of the games are coming out this year that are the main staples for every year, like a Forza game, Halo, Guardians of the Galaxy. A lot of these indie games will probably be out by the fall or by early next year. That we'll get our hands on. So it'll be interesting to see what actually comes of this stuff. Hopefully next year the pandemic is completely gone. People can go back to conventions, and then they can maybe hopefully get people together to put together a really good E3 that's more on par with a San Diego Comic-Con event, where you can have hundreds of thousands of people show up and experience stuff versus these passive things that we're getting now. So overall, you'll see people with videos out there nowadays saying like, who won E3, who did this. I'm not really a fan of thinking like who won, who didn't. Right now, Sony is looking bad because they came out with nothing and have nothing. Everybody will be raving about what they come up with when they have their own event in a few weeks, probably, or a month or two. In the end, the pandemic kind of screwed a lot of stuff over. We have people who can't get consoles. We got manufacturers who can't make consoles. And we got developers who aren't making a lot of games. So we just got to see what happens in the next year. And we kind of pick and choose the few games that we're going to buy and dump a ton of our time into. Because you're not going to have the plethora of overwhelming tons of games all of a sudden. We're just going to have a few good ones here and there. But thank you for listening. This has been the Forthright Gaming Podcast, making gaming content for gamers by gamers. This is our E3 discussion. And you can watch our stream on the Xbox Bethesda reactions on our website or on our YouTube channel. And we'll catch you next time. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you have a good one.